and the numbers glow, a hidden key that whispers truths to set me free. Infinite spirals, they unfold, a silent force, the story told. Even though I can't see the truth, they show the way under the moon. In endless patterns, they create a tapestry I contemplate. While the stars shine, I find my way through sacred codes in shades of gray. In harmony, they guide my path, a symphony that logic had. Even though I can't see the truth, they show the way under the moon. In endless patterns, they create a tapestry I contemplate. In spectral light, I close my eyes, embrace.
Chapter 1 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Adam Santoni. The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Chapter 1. The Coming of the Ship. El-Mustafa, the chosen and the beloved, who was a dawn unto his own day, had waited 12 years in the city of Orphalese for his ship that was to return and bear him back to the isle of his birth. And in the 12th year, on the 7th day of Elul, the month of reaping, he climbed the hill without the city walls and looked seaward, and he beheld his ship coming with the mist. Then the gates of his heart were flung open, and his joy flew far over the sea, and he closed his eyes and prayed in the silences of his soul. But as he descended the hill, a sadness came upon him, and he thought in his heart, How shall I go in peace and without sorrow? Nay, not without a wound in the spirit shall I leave this city. Long were the days of pain I have spent within its walls, and long were the nights of aloneness. And who can depart from his pain and his aloneness without regret? Too many fragments of the spirit have I scattered in these streets, and too many are the children of my longing that walk naked among these hills, and I cannot withdraw from them without a burden and an ache. It is not a garment I cast off this day, but a skin that I tear with my own hands. Nor is it a thought I leave behind me, but a heart made sweet with hunger and with thirst. Yet I cannot tarry longer. The sea that calls all things unto her calls me, and I must embark. For to stay, though the hours burn in the night, is to freeze and crystallize and be bound in a mold. Fain would I take it with me all that is here, but how shall I? A voice cannot carry the tongue, and the lips that gave it wings. Alone must it seek the ether, and alone and without his nest shall the eagle fly across the sun. Now when he reached the foot of the hill, he turned again towards the sea, and he saw his ship approaching the harbor, and upon her prow the mariners, the men of his own land. And his soul cried out to them, and he said, Sons of my ancient mother, you riders of the tides, how often have you sailed in my dreams, and now you come in my awakening, which is my deeper dream. Ready am I to go, and my eagerness with sails full set awaits the wind. Only another breath will I breathe in this still air, only another loving look cast backward. And then I shall stand among you, a seafarer among seafarers, and you, vast sea, sleepless mother, who alone art peace and freedom to the river and the stream. Only another winding will this stream make, only another murmur in this glade. And then shall I come to you, a boundless drop to a boundless ocean. And as he walked, he saw from afar men and women leaving their fields and their vineyards and hastening towards the city gates. And he heard their voices calling his name, and shouting from field to field, telling one another of the coming of his ship. And he said to himself, Shall the day of parting be the day of gathering? And shall it be said that my eve was in truth my dawn? And what shall I give unto him who has left his plough in mid-furrow, or to him who has stopped the wheel of his wine-press? Shall my heart become a tree heavy laden with fruit, that I may gather and give unto them? And shall my desires flow like a fountain, that I may fill their cups? Am I a harp, that the hand of the mighty may touch me, or a flute, that his breath may pass through me? A seeker of silences am I. And what treasure have I found in silences, that I may dispense with confidence? If this is my day of harvest, in what fields have I sowed the seed, and in what unremembered seasons? If this indeed be the hour in which I lift up my lantern, it is not my flame that shall burn therein. Empty and dark shall I raise my lantern, and the guardian of the night shall fill it with oil, and he shall light it also. These things he said in words, but much in his heart remained unsaid, for he himself could not speak his deeper secret. And when he entered into the city, all the people came to meet him, and they were crying out to him as with one voice. And the elders of the city stood forth and said, Go not yet away from us. A noontide have you been in our twilight, and your youth has given us dreams to dream. No stranger are you among us, nor a guest, but our son and our dearly beloved. Suffer not yet our eyes to hunger for your face. And the priests and the priestesses said unto him, Let not the waves of the sea separate us now, and the years you have spent in our midst become a memory. You have walked among us a spirit, and your shadow has been a light upon our faces. Much have we loved you, but speechless was our love, and with veils has it been veiled. Yet now it cries aloud unto you, and would stand revealed before you. And ever has it been that love knows not its own depth until the hour of separation. And others came also and entreated him, but he answered them not. He only bent his head, and those who stood near saw his tears falling upon his breast. And he and the people proceeded towards the great square before the temple. And there came out of the sanctuary a woman whose name was Almitra, and she was a seeress. And he looked upon her with exceeding tenderness, for it was she who had first sought and believed in him when he had been but a day in their city. And she hailed him, saying, Prophet of God, in quest of the uttermost, long have you searched the distances for your ship, and now your ship has come, and you must needs go. Deep is your longing for the land of your memories and the dwelling place of your greater desires, and our love would not bind you, nor our needs hold you. Yet this we ask ere you leave us, that you speak to us and give us your truth. And we will give it unto our children, and they unto their children, and it shall not perish. In your aloneness you have watched with our days, and in your wakefulness you have listened to the weeping and the laughter of our sleep. Now, therefore, disclose us to ourselves, and tell us all that has been shown you of that which is between birth and death. And he answered, People of Orphalese, of what can I speak save of that which is even now moving within your souls? End of chapter 1. Chapter 2 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Love. Then said Almitra, Speak to us of love. And he raised his head and looked upon the people, and there fell a stillness upon them. And with a great voice he said, When love beckons to you, follow him. And though his ways are hard and steep, and when his wings enfold you, yield to him. Though the sword hidden among his pinions may wound you, and when he speaks to you, believe in him, though his voice may shatter your dreams as the north wind lays waste the garden. For even as love crowns you, so shall he crucify you. Even as he is for your growth, so is he for your pruning. Even as he ascends to your height and caresses your tenderest branches that quiver in the sun, so shall he descend to your roots and shake them in their clinging to the earth. Like sheaves of corn he gathers you unto himself. He threshes you to make you naked. He sifts you to free you from your husks. He grinds you to whiteness. he kneads you until you are pliant. And then he assigns you to his sacred fire. Then you may become sacred bread for God's sacred feast. All these things shall love do unto you, that you may know the secrets of your heart, and in that knowledge become a fragment of life's heart. But if in your fear you would seek only love's peace and love's pleasure, then it is better for you that you cover your nakedness and pass out of love's threshing floor into the seasonless world where you shall laugh, but not all of your laughter, and weep, but not all of your tears. Love gives naught but itself, and takes naught but from itself. Love possesses not, nor would it be possessed. For love is sufficient unto love. When you love, you should not say, God is in my heart, but rather, I am in the heart of God. And think not you can direct the course of love, for love, if it finds you worthy, directs your course. Love has no other desire but to fulfill itself. But if you love and must needs have desires, let these be your desires. To melt and be like a running brook that sings its melody to the night. To know the pain of too much tenderness. To be wounded by your own understanding of love, and to bleed willingly and joyfully. To wake at dawn with a winged heart and give thanks for another day of loving. To rest at the noon hour and meditate love's ecstasy. To return home at eventide with gratitude, and then to sleep with a prayer for the beloved in your heart and a song of praise upon your lips. End of chapter 2. Chapter 3 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Marriage. Then Elmitra spoke again and said, And what of marriage, master? And he answered, saying, You were born together, and together you shall be forevermore. You shall be together when the white wings of death scatter your days. Aye, you shall be together even in the silent memory of God. But let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup. Give one another of your bread, but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone, even as the strings of a lute are alone, though they quiver with the same music. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together, for the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow. End of chapter 3. Chapter 4 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Children. And a woman who held a babe against her bosom said, Speak to us of children. And he said, Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in that archer's hand be for gladness. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. End of chapter 4. Chapter 5 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Giving. Then said a rich man, Speak to us of giving. And he answered, You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. For what are your possessions but things you keep and guard for fear you may need them tomorrow? And tomorrow, what shall tomorrow bring to the overprudent dog, burying bones in the trackless sand as he follows the pilgrims to the holy city? And what is fear of need but need itself? Is not dread of thirst when your well is full, the thirst that is unquenchable? There are those who give little of the much which they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desire makes their gifts unwholesome. And there are those who have little and give it all. These are the believers in life and the bounty of life, and their coffer is never empty. There are those who give with joy, and that joy is their reward. And there are those who give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. And there are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, nor give with mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley the myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these God speaks, and from behind their eyes he smiles upon the earth. It is well to give when asked, but it is better to give unasked, through understanding. And to the open-handed the search for one who shall receive is joy greater than giving. And is there aught you would withhold? All you have shall some day be given. Therefore give now, that the season of giving may be yours, and not your inheritors. You often say, I would give, but only to the deserving. The trees in your orchard say not so, nor the flocks in your pasture. They give that they may live, for to withhold is to perish. Surely he who is worthy to receive his days and his nights is worthy of all else from you. And he who has deserved to drink from the ocean of life deserves to fill his cup from your little stream. And what desert greater shall there be than that which lies in the courage and the confidence, nay, the charity, of receiving? And who are you that men should rend their bosom and unveil their pride, that you may see their worth naked and in their pride unabashed? See first that you yourself deserve to be a giver, and an instrument of giving. For in truth it is life that gives unto life, while you, who deem yourself a giver, are but a witness. And you receivers, and you are all receivers, assume no weight of gratitude, lest you lay a yoke upon yourself and upon him who gives. Rather rise together with the giver on his gifts as on wings. For to be overmindful of your debt is to doubt his generosity, who is the free-hearted earth for mother, and God for father. End of chapter 5. Chapter 6 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Eating and Drinking. Then an old man, a keeper of an inn, said, Speak to us of eating and drinking. And he said, Would that you could live on the fragrance of the earth, and like an air plant be sustained by the light. But since you must kill to eat, and rob the newly born of its mother's milk to quench your thirst, let it then be an act of worship. And let your board stand an altar on which the pure and the innocent of forest and plain are sacrificed for that which is purer and still more innocent in man. When you kill a beast, say to him in your heart, By the same power that slays you, I too am slain. And I too shall be consumed, for the law that delivered you into my hand shall deliver me into a mightier hand. Your blood and my blood is naught but the sap that feeds the tree of heaven. And when you crush an apple with your teeth, say to it in your heart, Your seed shall live in my body, and the buds of your tomorrow shall blossom in my heart, and your fragrance shall be my breath, and together we shall rejoice through all the seasons. And in the autumn, when you gather the grapes of your vineyards for the winepress, say in your heart, I too am a vineyard, and my fruit shall be gathered for the winepress. And like new wine I shall be kept in eternal vessels. And in winter, when you draw the wine, let there be in your heart a song for each cup. And let there be in the song a remembrance for the autumn days, and for the vineyard, and for the winepress. End of chapter 6. Chapter 7 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On work. Then a plowman said, Speak to us of work. And he answered, saying, You work that you may keep pace with the earth and the soul of the earth. For to be idle is to become a stranger unto the seasons, and to step out of life's procession that marches in majesty and proud submission towards the infinite. When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the hours turns to music. Which of you would be a reed? dumb and silent when all else sings together in unison. Always you have been told that work is a curse and labor a misfortune. But I say to you that when you work, you fulfill a part of earth's furthest dream, assigned to you when that dream was born. And in keeping yourself with labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's inmost secret. But if you in your pain call birth an affliction, and the support of the flesh a curse written upon your brow, then I answer that naught but the sweat of your brow shall wash away that which is written. You have been told also that life is darkness, and in your weariness you echo what was said by the weary. And I say that life is indeed darkness, save when there is urge, and all urge is blind save when there is knowledge, and all knowledge is vain save when there is work, and all work is empty save when there is love. And when you work with love, you bind yourself to yourself, and to one another and to God. And what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fashion with the breath of your own spirit, and to know that all the blessed dead are standing about you and watching. Often have I heard you say, as if speaking in sleep, "He who works in marble and finds the shape of his own soul in the stone is nobler than he who plows the soil. And he who seizes the rainbow to lay it on a cloth in the likeness of man is more than he who makes the sandals for our feet." But I say, not in sleep but in the overwakefulness of noontide, that the wind speaks not more sweetly to the giant oaks than to the least of all the blades of grass. And he alone is great who turns the voice of the wind into a song made sweeter by his own loving. Work is love made visible, and if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of the grapes, your grudge distills a poison in the wine. And if you sing though as angels, and love not the singing, you muffle man's ears to the voices of the day and the voices of the night. End of chapter 7. Chapter 8 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Joy and Sorrow. Then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow." And he answered, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, "Joy is greater than sorrow," and others say, "Nay, sorrow is the greater." But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty are you at standstill and balanced. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, needs must your joy or your sorrow rise or fall. End of chapter 8. Chapter 9 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Houses. Then a mason came forth and said, "Speak to us of houses." And he answered and said, "Build of your imaginings a bower in the wilderness, ere you build a house within the city walls. For even as you have homecomings in your twilight, so has the wanderer in you, the ever distant and alone. Your house is your larger body. It grows in the sun and sleeps in the stillness of the night. And it is not dreamless. Does not your house dream? And dreaming, leave the city for grove or hilltop? Would that I could gather your houses into my hand, and like a sower, scatter them in forest and meadow. Would the valleys were your streets, and the green paths your alleys, that you might seek one another through vineyards, and come with the fragrance of the earth in your garments. But these things are not yet to be. In their fear, your forefathers gathered you too near together, and that fear shall endure a little longer. A little longer shall your city walls separate your hearths from your fields. And tell me, people of Orphalese, what have you in these houses? And what is it you guard with fastened doors? Have you peace, the quiet urge that reveals your power? Have you remembrances, the glimmering arches that span the summits of the mind? Have you beauty that leads the heart from things fashioned of wood and stone to the holy mountain? Tell me, have you these in your houses? Or have you only comfort and the lust for comfort, that stealthy thing that enters the house as a guest and then becomes a host, and then a master? Aye, and it becomes a tamer, and with hook and scourge makes puppets of your larger desires. Though its hands are silken, its heart is of iron. It lulls you to sleep only to stand by your bed and jeer at the dignity of the flesh. It makes mock of your sound senses, and lays them in thistledown like fragile vessels. Verily, the lust for comfort murders the passion of the soul, and then walks grinning in the funeral. But you, children of space, you restless in rest, you shall not be trapped nor tamed. Your house shall be not an anchor, but a mast. It shall not be a glistening film that covers a wound, but an eyelid that guards the eye. You shall not fold your wings that you may pass through doors, nor bend your heads that they strike not against a ceiling, nor fear to breathe lest walls should crack and fall down. You shall not dwell in tombs made by the dead for the living. And though of magnificence and splendor, your house shall not hold your secret, nor shelter your longing. For that which is boundless in you abides in the mansion of the sky, whose door is the morning mist, and whose windows are the songs and the silences of the night. End of chapter 9. Chapter 10 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On clothes. And the weaver said, Speak to us of clothes. And he answered, Your clothes conceal much of your beauty, yet they hide not the unbeautiful. And though you seek in garments the freedom of privacy, you may find in them a harness and a chain. Would that you could meet the sun and the wind with more of your skin and less of your raiment. For the breath of life is in the sunlight, and the hand of life is in the wind. Some of you say, It is the north wind who has woven the clothes we wear. And I say, Aye, it was the north wind. But shame was his loom, and the softening of the sinews was his thread. And when his work was done, he laughed in the forest. Forget not that modesty is for a shield against the eye of the unclean. And when the unclean shall be no more, what were modesty but a fetter and a fouling of the mind? And forget not that the earth delights to feel your bare feet, and the winds long to play with your hair. End of chapter 10. Chapter 11 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On buying and selling. And a merchant said, Speak to us of buying and selling. And he answered and said, To you the earth yields her fruit, and you shall not want if you but know how to fill your hands. It is in exchanging the gifts of the earth that you shall find abundance and be satisfied. Yet unless the exchange be in love and kindly justice, it will but lead some to greed and others to hunger. When in the marketplace, you toilers of the sea and fields and vineyards, meet the weavers and the potters and the gatherers of spices, Invoke then the master spirit of the earth to come into your midst and sanctify the scales and the reckoning that weighs value against value. And suffer not the barren-handed to take part in your transactions, who would sell their words for your labor. To such men you should say, Come with us to the field, or go with our brothers to the sea, and cast your net, for the land and the sea shall be bountiful to you, even as to us. And if there come the singers and the dancers and the flute players, buy of their gifts also, for they too are gatherers of fruit and frankincense, and that which they bring, though fashioned of dreams, is raiment and food for your soul. And before you leave the marketplace, see that no one has gone his way with empty hands. For the master spirit of the earth shall not sleep peacefully upon the wind till the needs of the least of you are satisfied. End of chapter 11. Chapter 12 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Crime and Punishment. Then one of the judges of the city stood forth and said, Speak to us of crime and punishment. And he answered, saying, It is when your spirit goes wandering upon the wind, that you, alone and unguarded, commit a wrong unto others, and therefore unto yourself. And for that wrong committed must you knock and wait a while, unheeded at the gate of the blessed. Like the ocean is your God's self. It remains forever undefiled, and like the ether it lifts but the winged. Even like the sun is your God's self. It knows not the ways of the mole, nor seeks it the holes of the serpent. But your God's self dwells not alone in your being. Much in you is still man, and much in you is not yet man, but a shapeless pygmy that walks asleep in the mist, searching for its own awakening. And of the man in you would I now speak, for it is he, and not your God's self, nor the pygmy in the mist, that knows crime and the punishment of crime. Oftentimes have I heard you speak of one who commits wrong, as though he were not one of you, but a stranger unto you, and an intruder upon your world. But I say that even as the holy and the righteous cannot rise beyond the highest which is in each one of you, so the wicked and the weak cannot fall lower than the lowest which is in you also. And as a single leaf turns not yellow, but with the silent knowledge of the whole tree, so the wrongdoer cannot do wrong without the hidden will of you all. Like a procession, you walk together towards your God's self. You are the way and the wayfarers. And when one of you falls down, he falls for those behind him, a caution against the stumbling stone. Aye, and he falls for those ahead of him, who though faster and surer of foot, yet remove not the stumbling stone. And this also, though the word lie heavy upon your hearts, the murdered is not unaccountable for his own murder, and the robbed is not blameless in being robbed. The righteous is not innocent of the deeds of the wicked, and the white-handed is not clean in the doings of the felon. Yea, the guilty is oftentimes the victim of the injured, and still more often the condemned is the burden-bearer for the guiltless and unblamed. You cannot separate the just from the unjust, and the good from the wicked, for they stand together before the face of the sun, even as the black thread and the white are woven together. And when the black thread breaks, the weaver shall look into the whole cloth, and he shall examine the loom also. If any of you would bring to judgment the unfaithful wife, let him also weigh the heart of her husband in scales, and measure his soul with measurements. And let him who would lash the offender look unto the spirit of the offended. And if any of you would punish in the name of righteousness, and lay the axe unto the evil tree, let him see to its roots. And verily he will find the roots of the good and the bad, the fruitful and the fruitless, all entwined together in the silent heart of the earth. And you judges who would be just, what judgment pronounce you upon him who though honest in the flesh, yet is a thief in spirit? What penalty lay you upon him who slays in the flesh, yet is himself slain in the spirit? And how prosecute you him who in action is a deceiver and an oppressor, yet who also is aggrieved and outraged? And how shall you punish those whose remorse is already greater than their misdeeds? Is not remorse the justice which is administered by that very law which you would fain serve? Yet you cannot lay remorse upon the innocent, nor lift it from the heart of the guilty. Unbidden shall it call in the night, that men may wake and gaze upon themselves. And you who would understand justice, how shall you unless you look upon all deeds in the fullness of light? Only then shall you know that the erect and the fallen are but one man standing in twilight between the night of his pygmy self and the day of his God self, and that the cornerstone of the temple is not higher than the lowest stone in its foundation. End of chapter 12. Chapter 13 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Laws. Then a lawyer said, "But what of our laws, master?" And he answered, "You delight in laying down laws, yet you delight more in breaking them. Like children playing by the ocean who build sand towers with constancy and then destroy them with laughter. But while you build your sand towers, the ocean brings more sand to the shore. And when you destroy them, the ocean laughs with you. Verily, the ocean laughs always with the innocent. But what of those to whom life is not an ocean, and man-made laws are not sand towers, but to whom life is a rock, and the law a chisel with which they would carve it in their own likeness? What of the cripple who hates dancers? What of the ox who loves his yoke and deems the elk and deer of the forest stray and vagrant things? What of the old serpent who cannot shed his skin and calls all others naked and shameless? And of him who comes early to the wedding feast, and when overfed and tired goes his way saying that all feasts are violation and all feasters lawbreakers? What shall I say of these save that they too stand in the sunlight, but with their backs to the sun? They see only their shadows, and their shadows are their laws. And what is the sun to them but a caster of shadows? And what is it to acknowledge the laws but to stoop down and trace their shadows upon the earth? But you who walk facing the sun, what images drawn on the earth can hold you? You who travel with the wind, what weather vane shall direct your course? What man's law shall bind you if you break your yoke, but upon no man's prison door? What laws shall you fear if you dance but stumble against no man's iron chains? And who is he that shall bring you to judgment if you tear off your garment, yet leave it in no man's path? People of Orphalese, you can muffle the drum, and you can loosen the strings of the lyre, but who shall command the skylark not to sing? End of chapter 13. Chapter 14 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Freedom. And an orator said, "Speak to us of freedom." And he answered, "At the city gate and by your fireside I have seen you prostrate yourself and worship your own freedom, even as slaves humble themselves before a tyrant and praise him though he slays them. I, in the grove of the temple and in the shadow of the citadel, I have seen the freest among you wear their freedom as a yoke and a handcuff. And my heart bled within me, for you can only be free when even the desire of seeking freedom becomes a harness to you, and when you cease to speak of freedom as a goal and a fulfillment. You shall be free indeed when your days are not without a care, nor your nights without a want and a grief, but rather when these things girdle your life, and yet you rise above them, naked and unbound. And how shall you rise beyond your days and nights unless you break the chains which you at the dawn of your understanding have fastened around your noon hour? In truth, that which you call freedom is the strongest of these chains, though its links glitter in the sun and dazzle your eyes. And what is it but fragments of your own self you would discard that you may become free? If it is an unjust law you would abolish, that law was written with your own hand upon your own forehead. You cannot erase it by burning your law books, nor by washing the foreheads of your judges, though you pour the sea upon them. And if it is despot you would dethrone, see first that his throne erected within you is destroyed. For how can a tyrant rule the free and the proud, but for a tyranny in their own freedom and a shame in their own pride? And if it is a care you would cast off, that cart has been chosen by you rather than imposed on you. And if it is a fear you would dispel, the seat of that fear is in your heart, and not in the hand of the feared. Verily, all things move within your being in constant half-embrace, the desired and the dreaded, the repugnant and the cherished, the pursued and that which you would escape. These things move within you as lights and shadows in pairs that cling. And when the shadow fades and is no more, the light that lingers becomes a shadow to another light. And thus your freedom, when it loses its fetters, becomes itself the fetter of a greater freedom. End of chapter 14. Chapter 15 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Reason and Passion. And the priestess spoke again and said, Speak to us of reason and passion. And he answered, saying, Your soul is oftentimes a battlefield, upon which your reason and your judgment wage war against your passion and your appetite. Would that I could be the peacemaker in your soul, that I might turn the discord and the rivalry of your elements into oneness and melody. But how shall I, unless you yourselves be also the peacemakers, nay, the lovers of all your elements? Your reason and your passion are the rudder and the sails of your seafaring soul. If either your sails or your rudder be broken, you can but toss and drift, or else be held at a standstill in mid-seas. For reason, ruling alone, is a force confining, and passion unattended is a flame that burns to its own destruction. Therefore, let your soul exalt your reason to the height of passion, that it may sing. And let it direct your passion with reason, that your passion may live through its own daily resurrection, and like the phoenix rise above its own ashes. I would have you consider your judgment and your appetite even as you would two loved guests in your house. Surely you would not honor one guest above the other, for he who is more mindful of one loses the love and the faith of both. Among the hills, when you sit in the cool shade of the white poplars, sharing the peace and serenity of distant fields and meadows, then let your heart say in silence, God rests in reason. And when the storm comes, and the mighty wind shakes the forest, and thunder and lightning proclaim the majesty of the sky, then let your heart say in awe, God moves in passion. And since you are a breath in God's sphere, and a leaf in God's forest, you too should rest in reason, and move in passion. End of chapter 15. Chapter 16 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Pain. And a woman spoke, saying, Tell us of pain. And he said, Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Even as the stone of the fruit must break, that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain. And you could keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. And you would accept the seasons of your heart, even as you have always accepted the seasons that pass over your fields. And you would watch with serenity through the winters of your grief. Much of your pain is self-chosen. It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore, trust the physician, and drink his remedy in silence and tranquility. For his hand, though heavy and hard, is guided by the tender hand of the unseen. And the cup he brings, though it burn your lips, has been fashioned of the clay which the potter has moistened with his own sacred tears. End of chapter 16. Chapter 17 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Self-Knowledge. And a man said, Speak to us of self-knowledge. And he answered, saying, Your hearts know in silence the secrets of the days and the nights, but your ears thirst for the sound of your heart's knowledge. You would know in words that which you have always known in thought. You would touch with your fingers the naked body of your dreams. And it is well you should. The hidden wellspring of your soul must needs rise and run murmuring to the sea, and the treasure of your infinite depths would be revealed to your eyes. But let there be no scales to weigh your unknown treasure, and seek not the depths of your knowledge with staff or sounding line, for self is a sea boundless and measureless. Say not, I have found the truth, but rather, I have found a truth. Say not, I have found the path of the soul, say rather, I have met the soul walking upon my path. For the soul walks upon all paths. The soul walks not upon a line, neither does it grow like a reed. The soul unfolds itself like a lotus of countless petals. End of chapter 17. Chapter 18 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Teaching. Then said a teacher, Speak to us of teaching. And he said, No man can reveal to you aught but that which already lies half asleep in the dawning of your knowledge. The teacher who walks in the shadow of the temple among his followers gives not of his wisdom, but rather of his faith and his lovingness. If he is indeed wise, he does not bid you enter the house of his wisdom, but rather leads you to the threshold of your own mind. The astronomer may speak to you of his understanding of space, but he cannot give you his understanding. The musician may sing to you of the rhythm which is in all space, but he cannot give you the ear which arrests the rhythm, nor the voice that echoes it. And he who is versed in the science of numbers can tell of the regions of weight and measure, but he cannot conduct you thither. For the vision of one man lends not its wings to another man. And even as each one of you stands alone in God's knowledge, so must each one of you be alone in his knowledge of God and in his understanding of the earth. End of chapter 18. Chapter 19 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Friendship. And a youth said, Speak to us of friendship. And he answered, saying, Your friend is your needs answered. He is your field which you sow with love and reap with thanksgiving. And he is your board and your fireside. For you come to him with your hunger, and you seek him for peace. When your friend speaks his mind, you fear not the nay in your own mind, nor do you withhold the I. And when he is silent, your heart ceases not to listen to his heart. For without words, in friendship, all thoughts, all desires, all expectations are born and shared, with joy that is unacclaimed. When you part from your friend, you grieve not, for that which you love most in him may be clearer in his absence, as the mountain to the climber is clearer from the plain, and let there be no purpose in friendship save the deepening of the spirit. For love that seeks aught but the disclosure of its own mystery is not love, but a net cast forth, and only the unprofitable is caught. And let your best be for your friend. If he must know the ebb of your tide, let him know its flood also. For what is your friend that you should seek him with hours to kill? Seek him always with hours to live, for it is his to fill your need, but not your emptiness. And in the sweetness of friendship, let there be laughter, and sharing of pleasures. For in the dew of little things the heart finds its morning, and is refreshed. End of chapter 19. Chapter 20 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Talking. And then a scholar said, Speak of talking. And he answered, saying, You talk when you cease to be at peace with your thoughts. And when you can no longer dwell in the solitude of your heart, you live in your lips, and sound is a diversion and a pastime. And in much of your talking, thinking is half murdered. For thought is a bird of space, that in a cage of words may indeed unfold its wings, but cannot fly. There are those among you who seek the talkative through fear of being alone. The silence of aloneness reveals to their eyes their naked selves, and they would escape. And there are those who talk, and without knowledge or forethought reveal a truth which they themselves do not understand. And there are those who have the truth within them, but they tell it not in words. In the bosom of such as these the Spirit dwells in rhythmic silence. When you meet your friend on the roadside or in the marketplace, let the Spirit in you move your lips and direct your tongue. Let the voice within your voice speak to the ear of his ear. For his soul will keep the truth of your heart, as the taste of the wine is remembered when the color is forgotten and the vessel is no more. End of chapter 20. Chapter 21 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On time. And an astronomer said, Master, what of time? And he answered, You would measure time, the measureless and the immeasurable. You would adjust your conduct and even direct the course of your spirit according to hours and seasons. Of time you would make a stream upon whose bank you would sit and watch its flowing. Yet the timeless in you is aware of life's timelessness, and knows that yesterday is but today's memory, and tomorrow is today's dream. And that which sings and contemplates in you is still dwelling within the bounds of that first moment which scattered the stars into space. Who among you does not feel that his power to love is boundless? And yet who does not feel that very love, though boundless, encompassed within the center of his being, and moving not from love thought to love thought, nor from love deeds to other love deeds? And is not time even as love is, undivided and paceless? But if in your thought you must measure time into seasons, let each season encircle all the other seasons. And let today embrace the past with remembrance and the future with longing. End of chapter 21. Chapter 22 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Good and Evil. And one of the elders of the city said, Speak to us of good and evil. And he answered, Of the good in you I can speak, but not of the evil. For what is evil but good tortured by its own hunger and thirst? Verily, when good is hungry, it seeks food even in dark caves, and when it thirsts, it drinks even of dead waters. You are good when you are one with yourself. Yet when you are not one with yourself, you are not evil. For a divided house is not a den of thieves, it is only a divided house. And a ship without rudder may wander aimlessly among perilous isles, yet sink not to the bottom. You are good when you strive to give of yourself. Yet you are not evil when you seek gain for yourself. For when you strive for gain, you are but a root that clings to the earth and sucks at her breast. Surely the fruit cannot say to the root, Be like me, ripe and full and ever giving of your abundance. For to the fruit giving is a need, as receiving is a need to the root. You are good when you are fully awake in your speech. Yet you are not evil when you sleep while your tongue staggers without purpose, and even stumbling speech may strengthen a weak tongue. You are good when you walk to your goal firmly and with bold steps. Yet you are not evil when you go thither limping. Even those who limp go not backward. But you who are strong and swift, see that you do not limp before the lame, deeming it kindness. You are good in countless ways, and you are not evil when you are not good. You are only loitering and sluggard. Pity that the stags cannot teach swiftness to the turtles. In your longing for your giant self lies your goodness, and that longing is in all of you. But in some of you that longing is a torrent rushing with might to the sea, carrying the secrets of the hillsides and the songs of the forest. and in others it is a flat stream that loses itself in angles and bends, and lingers before it reaches the shore. But let not him who longs much say to him who longs little, Wherefore are you slow and halting? For the truly good ask not the naked, Where is your garment? Nor the houseless, What has befallen your house? End of chapter 22. Chapter 23 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Prayer. Then a priestess said, Speak to us of prayer. And he answered, saying, You pray in your distress and in your need. Would that you might pray also in the fullness of your joy and in your days of abundance. For what is prayer but the expansion of yourself into the living ether? And if it is for your comfort to pour your darkness into space, it is also for your delight to pour forth the dawning of your heart. And if you cannot but weep when your soul summons you to prayer, she should spur you again, and yet again, though weeping, until you shall come laughing. When you pray, you rise to meet in the air those who are praying at that very hour, and whom save in prayer you may not meet. Therefore let your visit to that temple invisible be for naught but ecstasy and sweet communion. For if you should enter the temple for no other purpose than asking, you shall not receive. And if you should enter it to humble yourself, you shall not be lifted. Or even if you should enter it to beg for the good of others, you shall not be heard. It is enough that you enter the temple invisible. I cannot teach you how to pray in words. God listens not to your words, save when he himself utters them through your lips. And I cannot teach you the prayer of the seas and the forests and the mountains. But you who are born of the mountains and the forests and the seas can find their prayer in your heart. And if you but listen in the stillness of the night, you shall hear them saying in silence, Our God, who art our winged self, it is thy will in us that willeth. It is thy desire in us that desireth. It is thy urge in us that would turn our nights, which are thine, into days, which are thine also. We cannot ask thee for aught, for thou knowest our needs before they are born in us. Thou art our need, and in giving us more of thyself, thou givest us all. End of chapter 23. Chapter 24 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Pleasure. Then a hermit who visited the city once a year came forth and said, Speak to us of pleasure. And he answered, saying, Pleasure is a freedom song, but it is not freedom. It is the blossoming of your desires, but it is not their fruit. It is a depth calling unto a height, but it is not the deep nor the high. It is the caged taking wing, but it is not space encompassed. Aye, in very truth, pleasure is a freedom song. And I fain would have you sing it with fullness of heart, yet I would not have you lose your hearts in the singing. Some of your youth seek pleasure as if it were all, and they are judged and rebuked. I would not judge nor rebuke them. I would have them seek, for they shall find pleasure, but not her alone. 7 are her sisters, and the least of them is more beautiful than pleasure. Have you not heard of the man who was digging in the earth for roots and found a treasure? And some of your elders remember pleasures with regret like wrongs committed in drunkenness. But regret is the beclouding of the mind, not its chastisement. They should remember their pleasures with gratitude, as they would the harvest of a summer. Yet if it comforts them to regret, let them be comforted. And there are among you those who are neither young to seek nor old to remember. And in their fear of seeking and remembering, they shun all pleasures, lest they neglect the spirit or offend against it. But even in their foregoing is their pleasure. And thus they too find a treasure, though they dig for roots with quivering hands. But tell me, who is he that can offend the spirit? Shall the nightingale offend the stillness of the night, or the firefly the stars? And shall your flame or your smoke burden the wind? Think you the spirit is a still pool which you can trouble with a staff? Oftentimes, in denying yourself pleasure, you do but store the desire in the recesses of your being. Who knows but that which seems omitted today waits for tomorrow? Even your body knows its heritage and its rightful need and will not be deceived. And your body is the harp of your soul, and it is yours to bring forth sweet music from it or confused sounds. And now you ask in your heart, how shall we distinguish that which is good and pleasure from that which is not good? Go to your fields and your gardens, and you shall learn that it is pleasure of the bee to gather honey of the flower, but it is also the pleasure of the flower to yield its honey to the bee. For to the bee a flower is a fountain of life, and to the flower a bee is a messenger of love. And to both, bee and flower, the giving and the receiving of pleasure is a need and an ecstasy. People of Orphalese, be in your pleasures like the flowers and the bees. End of chapter 24. Chapter 25 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Beauty. And a poet said, "Speak to us of beauty." And he answered, "Where shall you seek beauty, and how shall you find her, unless she herself be your way and your guide? And how shall you speak of her, except she be the weaver of your speech? The aggrieved and the injured say, Beauty is kind and gentle. Like a young mother, half shy of her own glory, she walks among us. And the passionate say, Nay, beauty is a thing of might and dread. Like the tempest, she shakes the earth beneath us and the sky above us. The tired and the weary say, Beauty is of soft whisperings. She speaks in our spirit. Her voice yields to our silences like a faint light that quivers in fear of the shadow. But the restless say, We have heard her shouting among the mountains. And with her cries came the sound of hooves, and the beating of wings, and the roaring of lions. At night the watchmen of the city say, Beauty shall rise with the dawn from the east. And at noontide the toilers and the wayfarers say, We have seen her leaning over the earth from the windows of the sunset. In winter, say the snowbound, She shall come with the spring leaping upon the hills. And in the summer, heat the reapers say, We have seen her dancing with the autumn leaves, and we saw a drift of snow in her hair. All these things have you said of beauty. Yet in truth you spoke not of her, but of needs unsatisfied. And beauty is not a need, but an ecstasy. It is not a mouth thirsting nor an empty hand stretched forth, but rather a heart inflamed and a soul enchanted. It is not the image you would see nor the song you would hear, but rather an image you see though you close your eyes, and a song you hear though you shut your ears. It is not the sap within the furrowed bark, nor a wing attached to a claw, but rather a garden forever in bloom and a flock of angels forever in flight. People of Orphalese, beauty is life when life unveils her holy face. But you are life, and you are the veil. Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in a mirror. But you are eternity, and you are the mirror. End of chapter 25. Chapter 26 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Religion. And an old priest said, Speak to us of religion. And he said, Have I spoken this day of aught else? Is not religion all deeds and all reflection? And that which is neither deed nor reflection, but a wonder and a surprise ever springing in the soul, even while the hands hew the stone or tend the loom? Who can separate his faith from his actions, or his belief from his occupations? Who can spread his hours before him, saying, This for God and this for myself, this for my soul and this other for my body? All your hours are wings that beat through space from self to self. He who wears his morality but as his best garment were better naked. The wind and the sun will tear no holes in his skin. And he who defines his conduct by ethics imprisons his songbird in a cage. The freest song comes not through bars and wires. And he to whom worshipping is a window, to open but also to shut, has not yet visited the house of his soul, whose windows are from dawn to dawn. Your daily life is your temple and your religion. Whenever you enter it, take with you your all. Take the plow and the forge and the mallet and the lute, the things you have fashioned in necessity or for delight. For in reverie you cannot rise above your achievements, nor fall lower than your failures. And take with you all men, for in adoration you cannot fly higher than their hopes, nor humble yourself lower than their despair. And if you would know God, be not therefore a solver of riddles. Rather look about you, and you shall see him playing with your children. And look into space, you shall see him walking in the cloud, outstretching his arms in the lightning and descending in rain. You shall see him smiling in flowers, then rising and waving his hands in the trees. End of chapter 26. Chapter 27 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Death. Then Nietzsche spoke, saying, "We would ask now of death." And he said, "You would know the secret of death. But how shall you find it, unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day cannot unveil the mystery of light. But if you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. And like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king, whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling, that he shall wear the mark of the king? Yet is he not more mindful of his trembling? For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountain-top, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then shall you truly dance. And now it was evening. And Nietzsche the seeress said, "Blessed be this day, and this place, and your spirit that has spoken." And he answered, "Was it I who spoke? Was I not also a listener?" End of chapter 27. Chapter 28 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Farewell. Then he descended the steps of the temple, and all the people followed him. And he reached his ship and stood upon the deck. And facing the people again, he raised his voice and said, "People of Orphalese, the wind bids me leave you. Less hasty am I than the wind, yet I must go. We wanderers, ever seeking the lonelier way, begin no day where we have ended another day, and no sunrise finds us where sunset left us. Even while the earth sleeps, we travel. We are the seeds of the tenacious plant, and it is in our ripeness and our fullness of heart that we are given to the wind and are scattered. Brief were my days among you, and briefer still the words I have spoken. But should my voice fade in your ears, and my love vanish in your memory, then I will come again. And with a richer heart and lips more yielding to the Spirit will I speak. Yea, I shall return with the tide, and though death may hide me, and the greater silence enfold me, yet again will I seek your understanding. And not in vain will I seek. If aught I have said is truth, that truth shall reveal itself in a clearer voice, and in words more kin to your thoughts. I go with the wind, people of Orphalese, but not down into emptiness. And if this day is not a fulfillment of your needs and my love, then let it be a promise till another day. Man's need change, but not his love, nor his desire that his love should satisfy his needs. Know, therefore, that from the greater silence I shall return. The mist that drifts away at dawn, leaving but dew in the fields, shall rise and gather into a cloud, and then fall down in rain. And not unlike the mist have I been. In the stillness of the night I have walked in your streets, and my spirit has entered your houses. And your heartbeats were in my heart, and your breath was upon my face, and I knew you all. I knew your joy and your pain, and in your sleep your dreams were my dreams. And oftentimes I was among you a lake among the mountains. I mirrored the summits in you and the bending slopes, and even the passing flocks of your thoughts and your desires. And to my silence came the laughter of your children in streams, and the longing of your youths in rivers. And when they reached my depth, the streams and the rivers ceased not yet to sing, but sweeter still than laughter and greater than longing came to me. It was the boundless in you, the vast man in whom you are all but cells and sinews, he in whose chant all your singing is but a soundless throbbing. It is in the vast man that you are vast, and in beholding him that I beheld you and loved you. For what distances can love reach that are not in that vast sphere? What visions, what expectations, and what presumptions can outsoar that flight? Like a giant oak tree covered with apple blossoms is the vast man in you. His might binds you to the earth, his fragrance lifts you into space, and in his durability you are deathless. You have been told that, even like a chain, you are as weak as your weakest link. This is but half the truth. You are also as strong as your strongest link. To measure you by your smallest deed is to reckon the power of ocean by the frailty of its foam. To judge you by your failures is to cast blame upon the seasons for their inconstancy. Aye, you are like an ocean, and though heavy-grounded ships await the tide upon your shores, yet, even like an ocean, you cannot hasten your tides. And like the seasons you are also, and though in your winter you deny your spring, yet spring, reposing within you, smiles in her drowsiness and is not offended. Think not I say these things in order that you may say the one to the other, he praised us well, he saw but the good in us. I only speak to you in words of that which you yourselves know in thought. And what is word knowledge but a shadow of wordless knowledge? Your thoughts and my words are waves from a sealed memory that keeps records of our yesterdays, and of the ancient days when the earth knew not us nor herself, and of nights when earth was upwrought with confusion. Wise men have come to you to give you their wisdom. I came to take of your wisdom. And behold, I have found that which is greater than wisdom. It is a flame spirit in you ever gathering more of itself, while you, heedless of its expansion, bewail the withering of your days. It is life in quest of life in bodies that fear the grave. There are no graves here. These mountains and plains are a cradle and a stepping stone. Whenever you pass by the field where you have laid your ancestors, look well thereupon, and you shall see yourselves and your children dancing hand in hand. Verily, you often make merry without knowing. Others have come to you to whom for golden promises made unto your faith you have given but riches and power and glory. Less than a promise have I given, and yet more generous have you been to me. You have given me my deeper thirsting after life. Surely there is no greater gift to a man than that which turns all his aims into parching lips and all life into a fountain. And in this lies my honor and my reward, that whenever I come to the fountain to drink, I find the living water itself thirsty, and it drinks me while I drink it. Some of you have deemed me proud and overshy to receive gifts. Too proud indeed am I to receive wages, but not gifts. And though I have eaten berries among the hills when you would have had me sit at your board, and slept in the portico of the temple when you would gladly have sheltered me, yet was it not your loving mindfulness of my days and my nights that made food sweet to my mouth and girdled my sleep with visions? For this I bless you most. You give much, and know not that you give at all. Verily, the kindness that gazes upon itself in a mirror turns to stone, and a good deed that calls itself by tender names becomes the parent to a curse. And some of you have called me aloof, and drunk with my own aloneness. And you have said, he holds counsel with the trees of the forest, but not with men. He sits alone on hilltops, and looks down upon our city. True it is that I have climbed the hills and walked in remote places. How could I have seen you, save from a great height or a great distance? How can one be indeed near, unless he be far? And others among you called unto me, not in words, and they said, Stranger, stranger, lover of unreachable heights, why dwell you among the summits where eagles build their nests? Why seek you the unattainable? What storms would you trap in your net, and what vaporous birds do you hunt in the sky? Come and be one of us. Descend and appease your hunger with our bread, and quench your thirst with our wine. In the solitude of their souls they said these things. But were their solitude deeper, they would have known that I sought but the secret of your joy and your pain, and I hunted only your larger selves that walked the sky. But the hunter was also the hunted. For many of my arrows left my bow only to seek my own breast, and the flyer was also the creeper. For when my wings were spread in the sun, their shadow upon the earth was a turtle. And I, the believer, was also the doubter. For often have I put my finger in my own wound, that I might have the greater belief in you, and the greater knowledge of you. And it is with this belief and this knowledge that I say, you are not enclosed within your bodies, nor confined to houses or fields. That which is you dwells above the mountain and roves with the wind. It is not a thing that crawls into the sun for warmth, or digs holes into darkness for safety, but a thing free, a spirit that envelops the earth and moves in the ether. If these be vague words, then seek not to clear them. Vague and nebulous is the beginning of all things, but not their end. And I fain would have you remember me as a beginning. Life, and all that lives, is conceived in the mist and not in the crystal. And who knows but a crystal is mist and decay? This would I have you remember in remembering me. That which seems most feeble and bewildered in you is the strongest and most determined. Is it not your breath that has erected and hardened the structure of your bones? And is it not a dream which none of you remember having dreamt, that builded your city and fashioned all there is in it? Could you but see the tides of that breath, you would cease to see all else. And if you could hear the whispering of the dream, you would hear no other sound. But you do not see, nor do you hear, and it is well. The veil that clouds your eyes shall be lifted by the hands that wove it, and the clay that fills your ears shall be pierced by those fingers that kneaded it, and you shall see, and you shall hear. Yet you shall not deplore having known blindness, nor regret having been deaf. For in that day you shall know the hidden purposes in all things, and you shall bless darkness as you would bless light. After saying these things he looked about him, and he saw the pilot of his ship standing by the helm, and gazing now at the full sails, and now at the distance. And he said, Patient, over patient, is the captain of my ship. The wind blows, and restless are the sails. Even the rudder begs direction. Yet quietly my captain awaits my silence. And these my mariners, who have heard the choir of the greater sea, they too have heard me patiently. Now they shall wait no longer. I am ready. The stream has reached the sea, and once more the great mother holds her son against her breast. Fare you well, people of Orphalese. This day has ended. It is closing upon us even as the water lily upon its own tomorrow. What was given us here we shall keep, and if it suffices not, then again must we come together, and together stretch our hands unto the giver. Forget not that I shall come back to you. A little while, and my longing shall gather dust and foam for another body. A little while, a moment of rest upon the wind, and another woman shall bear me. Farewell to you, and the youth I have spent with you. It was but yesterday we met in a dream. You have sung to me in my aloneness, and I of your longings have built a tower in the sky. But now our sleep has fled, and our dream is over, and it is no longer dawn. The noontide is upon us, and our half-waking has turned to fuller day, and we must part. If in the twilight of memory we should meet once more, we shall speak again together, and you shall sing to me a deeper song. And if our hands should meet in another dream, we shall build another tower in the sky. So saying, he made a signal to the seamen, and straightway they weighed anchor and cast the ship loose from its moorings, and they moved eastward. And a cry came from the people as from a single heart, and it rose into the dusk and was carried out over the sea like a great trumpeting. Only Almitra was silent, gazing after the ship until it had vanished into the mist. And when all the people were dispersed, she still stood alone upon the sea wall, remembering in her heart his saying, "A little while, a moment of rest upon the wind, and another woman shall bear me." End of chapter 28. End of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Recording by Adam Santoni. Chapter 1 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Adam Santoni. The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Chapter 1. The Coming of the Ship. El-Mustafa, the Chosen and the Beloved, who was a dawn unto his own day, had waited 12 years in the city of Orphalese for his ship that was to return and bear him back to the isle of his birth. And in the 12th year, on the 7th day of Yelul, the month of reaping, he climbed the hill without the city walls and looked seaward, and he beheld his ship coming with the mist. Then the gates of his heart were flung open, and his joy flew far over the sea, and he closed his eyes and prayed in the silences of his soul. But as he descended the hill, a sadness came upon him, and he thought in his heart, "How shall I go in peace and without sorrow? Nay, not without a wound in the spirit shall I leave this city. Long were the days of pain I have spent within its walls, and long were the nights of aloneness. And who can depart from his pain and his aloneness without regret? Too many fragments of the spirit have I scattered in these streets, and too many are the children of my longing that walk naked among these hills, and I cannot withdraw from them without a burden and an ache. It is not a garment I cast off this day, but a skin that I tear with my own hands. Nor is it a thought I leave behind me, but a heart made sweet with hunger and with thirst. Yet I cannot tarry longer. The sea that calls all things unto her calls me, and I must embark. For to stay, though the hours burn in the night, is to freeze and crystallize and be bound in a mold. Fain would I take it with me all that is here, but how shall I? A voice cannot carry the tongue and the lips that gave it wings. Alone must it seek the ether, and alone and without his nest shall the eagle fly across the sun. Now when he reached the foot of the hill, he turned again towards the sea, and he saw his ship approaching the harbor, and upon her prow the mariners, the men of his own land. And his soul cried out to them, and he said, "Sons of my ancient mother, you riders of the tides, how often have you sailed in my dreams, and now you come in my awakening, which is my deeper dream. Ready am I to go, and my eagerness with sails full set awaits the wind. Only another breath will I breathe in this still air, only another loving look cast backward. And then I shall stand among you, a seafarer among seafarers, and you, vast sea, sleepless mother, who alone are peace and freedom to the river and the stream. Only another winding will this stream make, only another murmur in this glade. And then shall I come to you, a boundless drop to a boundless ocean." And as he walked, he saw from afar men and women leaving their fields and their vineyards and hastening towards the city gates. And he heard their voices calling his name, and shouting from field to field, telling one another of the coming of his ship. And he said to himself, "Shall the day of parting be the day of gathering? And shall it be said that my eve was in truth my dawn? And what shall I give unto him who has left his plough in mid-furrow, or to him who has stopped the wheel of his wine-press? Shall my heart become a tree heavy laden with fruit, that I may gather and give unto them? And shall my desires flow like a fountain, that I may fill their cups? Am I a harp, that the hand of the mighty may touch me, or a flute, that his breath may pass through me? A seeker of silences am I, and what treasure have I found in silences that I may dispense with confidence? If this is my day of harvest, in what fields have I sowed the seed, and in what unremembered seasons? If this indeed be the hour in which I lift up my lantern, it is not my flame that shall burn therein. Empty and dark shall I raise my lantern, and the guardian of the night shall fill it with oil, and he shall light it also. These things he said in words, but much in his heart remained unsaid, for he himself could not speak his deeper secret. And when he entered into the city, all the people came to meet him, and they were crying out to him as with one voice. And the elders of the city stood forth and said, Go not yet away from us. A noontide have you been in our twilight, and your youth has given us dreams to dream. No stranger are you among us, nor a guest, but our son and our dearly beloved. Suffer not yet our eyes to hunger for your face. And the priests and the priestesses said unto him, Let not the waves of the sea separate us now, and the years you have spent in our midst become a memory. You have walked among us a spirit, and your shadow has been a light upon our faces. Much have we loved you, but speechless was our love, and with veils has it been veiled. Yet now it cries aloud unto you, and would stand revealed before you. And ever has it been that love knows not its own depth until the hour of separation. And others came also and entreated him, but he answered them not. He only bent his head, and those who stood near saw his tears falling upon his breast. And he and the people proceeded towards the great square before the temple. And there came out of the sanctuary a woman whose name was Elmitra, and she was a seeress. And he looked upon her with exceeding tenderness, for it was she who had first sought and believed in him when he had been but a day in their city. And she hailed him, saying, Prophet of God, in quest of the uttermost, long have you searched the distances for your ship, and now your ship has come, and you must needs go. Deep is your longing for the land of your memories and the dwelling place of your greater desires, and our love would not bind you, nor our needs hold you. Yet this we ask ere you leave us, that you speak to us and give us your truth. And we will give it unto our children, and they unto their children, and it shall not perish. In your aloneness you have watched with our days, and in your wakefulness you have listened to the weeping and the laughter of our sleep. Now, therefore, disclose us to ourselves, and tell us all that has been shown you of that which is between birth and death. And he answered, People of Orphalese, of what can I speak save of that which is even now moving within your souls? End of chapter 1. Chapter 2 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Love. Then said Elmitra, Speak to us of love. And he raised his head and looked upon the people, and there fell a stillness upon them. And with a great voice he said, When love beckons to you, follow him. And though his ways are hard and steep, and when his wings enfold you, yield to him. Though the sword hidden among his pinions may wound you, and when he speaks to you, believe in him, though his voice may shatter your dreams as the north wind lays waste the garden. For even as love crowns you, so shall he crucify you. Even as he is for your growth, so is he for your pruning. Even as he ascends to your height and caresses your tenderest branches that quiver in the sun, so shall he descend to your roots and shake them in their clinging to the earth. Like sheaves of corn he gathers you unto himself. He threshes you to make you naked. He sifts you to free you from your husks. He grinds you to whiteness. He kneads you until you are pliant. And then he assigns you to his sacred fire. Then you may become sacred bread for God's sacred feast. All these things shall love do unto you, that you may know the secrets of your heart, and in that knowledge become a fragment of life's heart. But if in your fear you would seek only love's peace and love's pleasure, then it is better for you that you cover your nakedness and pass out of love's threshing floor, into the seasonless world where you shall laugh, but not all of your laughter, and weep, but not all of your tears. Love gives naught but itself, and takes naught but from itself. Love possesses, not nor would it be possessed. For love is sufficient unto love. When you love, you should not say, God is in my heart, but rather, I am in the heart of God. And think not you can direct the course of love, for love, if it finds you worthy, directs your course. Love has no other desire but to fulfill itself. But if you love and must needs have desires, let these be your desires. To melt and be like a running brook that sings its melody to the night. To know the pain of too much tenderness. To be wounded by your own understanding of love, and to bleed willingly and joyfully. To wake at dawn with a winged heart and give thanks for another day of loving. To rest at the noon hour and meditate love's ecstasy. To return home at eventide with gratitude, and then to sleep with a prayer for the beloved in your heart and a song of praise upon your lips. End of chapter 2. Chapter 3 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Marriage. Then Elmitra spoke again and said, And what of marriage, master? And he answered, saying, You were born together, and together you shall be forevermore. You shall be together when the white wings of death scatter your days. Aye, you shall be together even in the silent memory of God. But let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup. Give one another of your bread, but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone. Even as the strings of a lute are alone, though they quiver with the same music. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping. For only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together. For the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow. End of chapter 3. Chapter 4 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Children. And a woman who held a babe against her bosom said, Speak to us of children. And he said, Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in that archer's hand be for gladness. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. End of chapter 4. Chapter 5 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Giving. Then said a rich man, Speak to us of giving. And he answered, You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. For what are your possessions but things you keep and guard for fear you may need them tomorrow? And tomorrow, what shall tomorrow bring to the over-prudent dog, burying bones in the trackless sand as he follows the pilgrims to the holy city? And what is fear of need but need itself? Is not dread of thirst when your well is full, the thirst that is unquenchable? There are those who give little of the much which they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desire makes their gifts unwholesome. And there are those who have little and give it all. These are the believers in life and the bounty of life, and their coffer is never empty. There are those who give with joy, and that joy is their reward. And there are those who give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. And there are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, nor give with mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley the myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these God speaks, and from behind their eyes he smiles upon the earth. It is well to give when asked, but it is better to give unasked, through understanding. And to the open-handed the search for one who shall receive is joy greater than giving. And is there aught you would withhold? All you have shall some day be given. Therefore give now, that the season of giving may be yours, and not your inheritors. You often say, I would give, but only to the deserving. The trees in your orchard say not so, nor the flocks in your pasture. They give that they may live, for to withhold is to perish. Surely he who is worthy to receive his days and his nights is worthy of all else from you. And he who has deserved to drink from the ocean of life deserves to fill his cup from your little stream. And what desert greater shall there be than that which lies in the courage and the confidence, nay, the charity, of receiving? And who are you that men should rend their bosom and unveil their pride, that you may see their worth naked and in their pride unabashed? See first that you yourself deserve to be a giver, and an instrument of giving. For in truth it is life that gives unto life, while you, who deem yourself a giver, are but a witness. And you receivers, and you are all receivers, assume no weight of gratitude, lest you lay a yoke upon yourself and upon him who gives. Rather rise together with the giver on his gifts as on wings. For to be overmindful of your debt is to doubt his generosity, who is the free-hearted earth for mother, and God for father. End of chapter 5. Chapter 6 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Eating and Drinking. Then an old man, a keeper of an inn, said, Speak to us of eating and drinking. And he said, Would that you could live on the fragrance of the earth, and like an air plant be sustained by the light. But since you must kill to eat, and rob the newly born of its mother's milk to quench your thirst, let it then be an act of worship. And let your board stand an altar on which the pure and the innocent of forest and plain are sacrificed for that which is purer and still more innocent in man. When you kill a beast, say to him in your heart, By the same power that slays you, I too am slain. And I too shall be consumed, for the law that delivered you into my hand shall deliver me into a mightier hand. Your blood and my blood is naught but the sap that feeds the tree of heaven. And when you crush an apple with your teeth, say to it in your heart, Your seed shall live in my body, and the buds of your tomorrow shall blossom in my heart, and your fragrance shall be my breath, and together we shall rejoice through all the seasons. And in the autumn, when you gather the grapes of your vineyards for the winepress, say in your heart, I too am a vineyard, and my fruit shall be gathered for the winepress. And like new wine I shall be kept in eternal vessels. And in winter, when you draw the wine, let there be in your heart a song for each cup. And let there be in the song a remembrance for the autumn days, and for the vineyard, and for the winepress. End of chapter 6. Chapter 7 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Work. Then a plowman said, Speak to us of work. And he answered, saying, You work that you may keep pace with the earth and the soul of the earth. For to be idle is to become a stranger unto the seasons, and to step out of life's procession that marches in majesty and proud submission towards the infinite. When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the hours turns to music. Which of you would be a reed, dumb and silent when all else sings together in unison? Always you have been told that work is a curse and labor a misfortune. But I say to you that when you work, you fulfill a part of earth's furthest dream, assigned to you when that dream was born. And in keeping yourself with labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's inmost secret. But if you in your pain call birth an affliction, and the support of the flesh a curse written upon your brow, then I answer that naught but the sweat of your brow shall wash away that which is written. You have been told also that life is darkness, and in your weariness you echo what was said by the weary. And I say that life is indeed darkness, save when there is urge, and all urge is blind save when there is knowledge, and all knowledge is vain save when there is work, and all work is empty save when there is love. And when you work with love, you bind yourself to yourself, and to one another, and to God. And what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fashion with the breath of your own spirit, and to know that all the blessed dead are standing about you and watching. Often have I heard you say, as if speaking in sleep, "He who works in marble and finds the shape of his own soul in the stone is nobler than he who plows the soil. And he who seizes the rainbow to lay it on a cloth in the likeness of man is more than he who makes the sandals for our feet." But I say, not in sleep, but in the overwakefulness of noontide, that the wind speaks not more sweetly to the giant oaks than to the least of all the blades of grass. And he alone is great who turns the voice of the wind into a song made sweeter by his own loving. Work is love made visible, and if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of the grapes, your grudge distills a poison in the wine. And if you sing though as angels, and love not the singing, you muffle man's ears to the voices of the day and the voices of the night. End of chapter 7. Chapter 8 of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Joy and Sorrow. Then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow." And he answered, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, "Joy is greater than sorrow," and others say, "Nay, sorrow is the greater." But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty are you at standstill and balanced. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, needs must your joy or your sorrow rise or fall. End of chapter 8.
Part 1, Chapter 20 of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, translated by Nathan Haskell Doyle. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain, read by Marianne Spiegel. Anna spent the whole day at home, that is to say, at the Oblonskys', and refused to see any callers, although some of her friends, having learned of her arrival, came to see her. The whole morning was given to Dolly and the children. She sent a note to her brother that he must dine at home. "Come, God is merciful," she wrote. Oblonsky accordingly dined at home. The conversation was general, and his wife, when she spoke to him, called him "tui," thou, which had not been the case before. The relations between husband and wife remained cool, but nothing more was said about a separation, and Stepan Arkadyevitch saw the possibility of a reconciliation. Kitty came in soon after dinner. Her acquaintance with Anna Arkadyevna was very slight, and she was not without solicitude as to the welcome which she would receive from this great Petersburg lady, whose praise was in everybody's mouth. but she made a pleasing impression on Anna Arkadyevna. This she immediately realized. Anna evidently admired her youth and beauty, and Kitty was not slow in realizing a sense of being not only under her influence, but of being in love with her, and immediately fell in love with her, as young girls often fall in love with married women older than themselves. Anna was not like a society woman, or the mother of an 8-year-old son, but by the vivacity of movement, by the freshness and animation of her face expressed in her smile and in her eyes, she would have been taken rather for a young girl of 20, had it not been for a serious and sometimes almost melancholy look, which struck and attracted Kitty. Kitty felt that she was perfectly natural and sincere, but that there was something about her that suggested a whole world of complicated and poetic interests far beyond her comprehension. After dinner, when Dolly had gone to her room, Anna went eagerly to her brother, who was smoking a cigar. "Stiva," she said, giving him a joyous wink, making the sign of the cross and glancing toward the door. "Go, and God help you." He understood her, and, throwing away his cigar, disappeared behind the door. As soon as she had gone, Anna sat down upon a divan, surrounded by the children. Either because they saw that their mamma loved this aunt, or because they themselves felt a special attraction toward her, the two eldest, and therefore the younger, as often happens with children, had taken possession of her even before dinner, and could not leave her alone. And now they were having something like a game, in which each tried to get next to her, to hold her little hand, to kiss her, to play with her rings, or even to cling to the flounces of her gown. "There, there, let us sit as we were before," said Anna, sitting down in her place. And Grisha, proud and delighted, thrust his head under his aunt's arm, and nestled up close to her. "And when is the ball?" she asked of Kitty. "Next week. It will be a lovely ball, one of those balls where one always has a good time." "Then there are places where one always has a good time?" asked Anna, in a tone of gentle irony. "Strange, but it is so. We always enjoy ourselves at the Bobrishevs and at the Nikitins, but at the Mezkovs it is always dull. Haven't you ever noticed that?" "No, dusha moya, no ball could be amusing to me," said Anna, and again Kitty saw in her eyes that unknown world which had not yet been revealed to her. "For me they are all more or less tiresome." "How could you find a ball tiresome?" "And why should I not find a ball tiresome?" Kitty perceived that Anna foresaw what her answer would be. "Because you are the loveliest of all." Anna blushed easily. She blushed now and said, "In the first place, that is not true, and in the second, if it were, it would not make any difference." "Won't you go to this ball?" asked Kitty. "I think I would rather not go. Here, take it," she said to Tanya, who was drawing off a loose ring from her delicate white finger. "I should be delighted if you would go. I should so like to see you at a ball." "Well, if I have to go, I shall console myself with the thought that I am making you happy. Grisha, don't pull my hair down. It is disorderly enough now," she said, putting back the rebellious lock with which the lad was playing. "I can imagine you at a ball dressed in violet." "Why in violet?" asked Anna, smiling. "Now, children, run away. Run away. Don't you hear? Miss Hull is calling you to tea," said she, freeing herself from the children and sending them out of the dining room. "I know why you want me to go to the ball. You expect something wonderful to happen at this ball, and you are anxious for us all to be there so as to share in your happiness." "How did you know? You were right." "Oh, what a lovely age is yours," continued Anna. "I remember well, and know this purple haze like that which you see hanging over the mountains in Switzerland. This haze covers everything in that delicious time when childhood ends, and from out of this immense circle, so joyous, so gay, grows a footpath ever narrower and narrower, and leads gaily and painfully to that labyrinth, and yet it seems so bright and so beautiful. Who has not passed through it?" Kitty listened and smiled. How did she pass through it? How I should like to know the whole romance of her life, thought Kitty, remembering the unpoetic appearance of her husband, Alexey Alexandrovitch. "I know a thing or two," continued Anna. "Stiva told me, and I congratulate you. He pleased me very much. I met Vronsky at the station." "Oh, was he there?" asked Kitty, blushing. "What did Stiva tell you?" "Stiva told me the whole story, and I should be delighted. I came from Petersburg with Vronsky's mother," she continued, "and his mother never ceased to speak of him. He is her favorite. I know how partial mothers are, but—" "What did his mother tell you?" "Oh, many things, and I know that he is her favorite, but it is still evident he has a chivalrous nature. Well, for example, she told me how he wanted to give up his whole fortune to his brother, how he did something more wonderful when he was a boy, saved a woman from drowning. In a word, he is a hero," said Anna, smiling and remembering the 200 rubles which he had given at the station. But she did not tell about the 200 rubles. Somehow it was not pleasant for her to remember that. She felt that there was something in it that concerned herself too closely, and ought not to have been. "The countess urged me to come to see her," continued Anna, "and I should be very happy to meet her again, and I will go tomorrow. Thank the Lord, Stiva remains a long time with Dolly in the library," she added, changing the subject, and, as Kitty perceived, looking a little annoyed. "I'll be the first. No, I," cried the children, who had just finished their supper and came running to their Aunt Anna. "All together," she said, laughing, and running to meet them. She seized them and piled them in a heap, struggling and screaming with delight. End of chapter 20. Part 1, Chapter 21 of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, translated by Nathan Haskell Doyle. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Marianne Spiegel. At tea time, Dolly came out of her room. Stepan Arkadyevitch was not with her. He had left his wife's chamber by the rear door. "I'm afraid you will be cold upstairs," remarked Dolly, addressing Anna. "I should like to have you come down and be near me." "Oh, please don't worry about me," replied Anna, trying to divine by Dolly's face if there had been a reconciliation. "Perhaps it would be too light for you here," said her sister-in-law. "I assure you I sleep anywhere and everywhere as sound as a woodchuck." "What is it?" asked Stepan Arkadyevitch, coming in from his library and addressing his wife. By the tone of his voice, both Kitty and Anna knew that the reconciliation had taken place. "I wanted to install Anna downstairs, but we should have to put up some curtains. No one knows how to do it, and so I must," said Dolly, in reply to her husband's question. "God knows if they have wholly made it up," thought Anna, as she noticed Dolly's cold and even tone. "Ugh, don't. Dolly, don't make difficulties. Well, if you like, I will fix everything." Yes, thought Anna, they must have had a reconciliation. "I know how you do everything," said Dolly. "You give Matvey an order which it is impossible to carry out, and then you go away and he gets everything into a tangle." And her customary mocking smile wrinkled the corners of Dolly's lips as she said that. Complete reconciliation. Complete, thought Anna. Thank God. And rejoicing that she had been the cause of it, she went to Dolly and kissed her. "Not by any means. Why have you such scorn for Matvey and me?" said Stepan Arkadyevitch to his wife, with an almost imperceptible smile. Throughout the evening Dolly, as usual, was lightly ironical toward her husband, and Stepan Arkadyevitch was happy and gay, but within bounds, as if he wanted to make it evident that though he had obtained pardon, he had not forgotten his offense. About 9:30, a particularly animated and pleasant confidential conversation, which was going on at the tea-table, was interrupted by an incident apparently of the slightest importance, but this simple incident seemed to each member of the family to be very strange. They were talking about one of their Petersburg acquaintances, when Anna suddenly arose. "I have her picture in my album," she said, "and at the same time I will show you my little Seroza," she added with a smile of maternal pride. It was usually about 10 o'clock when she bade her son good night. Often she herself put him to bed before she went out to parties, and now she felt a sensation of sadness to be so far from him. No matter what people were speaking about, her thoughts reverted always to her little curly-haired Seroza, and the desire seized her to go and look at his picture and to talk about him. Using this first pretext, she, with her light, decided step, started to fetch her album. The stairs to her room started from the landing place in the large staircase which led from the heated hall. Just as she was leaving the drawing room, the front door bell rang. "Who can that be?" said Dolly. "It's too early to come after me, and it's too late for a call," remarked Kitty. "Doubtless somebody with papers for me," said Stepan Arkadyevitch. As Anna was passing the staircase she saw the servant going up to announce a caller, but the caller stood in the light of the hall lamp and was waiting. Anna glanced down and saw that it was Vronsky, and a strange sensation of joy, mixed with terror, suddenly seized her heart. He was standing with his coat on, and was taking something out of his pocket. At the same moment Anna reached the center of the staircase, he lifted his eyes and saw her, and his face assumed an expression of humility and confusion. She bowed her head slightly in salutation, and as she went on her way she heard Stepan Arkadyevitch's loud voice calling to him to come in, and then Vronsky's low, soft, tranquil voice excusing himself. When Anna reached the room with the album, he had gone, and Stepan Arkadyevitch was telling how he came to see about a dinner which they were going to give the next day in honor of some celebrity who was in town. "And nothing would induce him to come in. What a queer fellow," said Stepan Arkadyevitch. Kitty blushed. She thought that she alone understood what he had come for, and why he would not come in. "He must have been at our house," she thought, "and not finding me, have supposed that I was here. But he did not come in, because it was late, and Anna here." They all exchanged glances, but nothing was said, and they began to examine Anna's album. There was nothing extraordinary or strange in a man calling at 9:30 in the evening to inquire of a friend about the details of a proposed dinner and not coming in. Yet to everybody it seemed strange, and it seemed more strange and unpleasant to Anna than to anyone else. End of chapter 21. Part 1, Chapter 22 of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Translated by Nathan Haskell Doyle. The Slippervox recording is in the public domain. Read by Marianne Spiegel. The ball was just beginning when Kitty and her mother mounted the grand staircase, brilliantly lighted and adorned with flowers and with powdered lackeys in red kaftans. In the ballrooms there was an incessant bustle of movement, which sounded like the humming of a beehive, and, as they stopped to give the last touches to their hair and gowns before a mirror hung on the tree-decorated landing, they heard the scraping of violins as the orchestra was tuning up for the first waltz. A little old man, a civilian, who was smoothing his white locks in another mirror, and who exhaled a penetrating odor of perfumes, brushed against them on the stairway and stood aside, evidently impressed by Kitty's youth and beauty. A beardless young man, such as the old Prince Shtcherbatsky would have reckoned among the "mashers," wearing a very low-cut waistcoat and a white necktie which he adjusted as he walked, bowed to them, and after he had passed them turned back to ask Kitty for a quadrille. The first quadrille was already promised to Vronsky, and so she was obliged to content the young man with the second. An officer buttoning his gloves was standing near the door of the ballroom. He cast a glance of admiration at the blooming Kitty and caressed his moustache. Although Kitty had taken great pains and spent much labor on her toilet, her gown, and all her preparations for this ball, yet now she entered the ballroom in her complicated robe of tulle with its rose-colored overdress, as easily and naturally as if all these rosettes and laces, all the requirements of her toilet, had not caused her or her people a moment's attention, as if she had been born in this lace-trimmed ball dress, and with a rose and 2 ribbons placed on the top of her graceful head. When the old princess, her mother, just before they entered the ballroom, was about to readjust her broad sash ribbon, Kitty gently declined. She felt that everything about her must surely be right and graceful, and that to readjust anything about her was unnecessary. Kitty was looking her prettiest. Her gown was not too tight anywhere. Her lace fichu did not slip down, her rosettes did not crush, and did not pull off. Her rose-colored slippers with their high heels did not pinch her, but were agreeable to her feet. The thick braids of her hair kept perfectly in place on her graceful little head. All 3 buttons on her long gloves, which enveloped, without changing, the pretty shape of her hands, fastened easily and did not tear. The black velvet ribbon, attached to a medallion, was thrown daintily about her neck. This ribbon was charming, and at home, as she saw it in her mirror, adorning her neck, Kitty felt that this ribbon spoke. Everything else might be dubious, but this ribbon was charming. Kitty smiled, even there at the ball, as she saw it in the mirror. In her bare shoulders and arms Kitty felt a sensation of marble coolness, a sensation which she especially enjoyed. Her eyes shone, and her rosy lips could not refrain from smiling with the consciousness of how fascinating she was. She had scarcely entered the ballroom and joined a group of tulle, ribbon, lace, and flower-decorated ladies who were waiting for partners. Kitty never remained long in that category, when she was invited to waltz with the best dancer, the principal cavalier in the whole hierarchy of the ballroom, the celebrated leader of the mazurka, the master of ceremonies, the handsome, elegant Yegorushka Korsunsky, a married man and a civilian. He had just left the Countess Bonina, with whom he had been taking the first turns of the waltz, and, while looking round over his domain, in other words, over the few couples who were venturing out on the floor, he perceived Kitty, made his way to her in that easy manner peculiar to leaders of the mazurka, bowed, and without even asking her permission, put his arm around the young girl's slender waist. She looked for someone to whom to confide her fan, and the mistress of the mansion, smiling on her, took charge of it. "How good of you to come early," said Korsunsky, as he put his arm around her waist. "I don't like the fashion of being late." Kitty placed her left hand on her partner's shoulder, and her little feet, shod in rose-colored bashmaks, glided swiftly, lightly, and rhythmically over the polished floor. "It is restful to dance with you," said he, as he fell into the slow measures of the waltz. "Charming! Such lightness! Such precision!" That was what he said to almost all his dancing acquaintances. She smiled at his flattery, and continued to study the ballroom across her partner's shoulder. She was not such a novice in society as to find all faces blending in one magic sensation. She had not been so assiduous in her attendance at balls as to know everyone present and be tired of seeing them. But she was in that happy condition between these two extremes. She was exhilarated, and at the same time she was sufficiently self-possessed to be able to look around and observe. She noticed a group that had gathered in the left-hand corner of the ballroom, composed of the very flower of society. Korsunsky's wife, Lyddy, a beauty in an extremely low-cut corsage, was there. The mistress of the mansion was there. There shone Kriven's bald head, always to be seen where the flower of society was gathered. Young men were looking at this group, and not venturing to join it. Then her eyes fell on Stiva, who was also there, and then she saw Anna's elegant figure dressed in black velvet. And he was there. Kitty had not seen him since the evening when she refused Levin. Kitty's eyes instantly recognized him across the room, and saw that he was looking at her. "Shall we take one more turn? You are not fatigued?" asked Korsunsky, slightly out of breath. "No, thank you." "Where shall I leave you?" "I think Madame Karenina is here. Take me to her." "Anywhere that you please." And Korsunsky, still waltzing with Kitty but with a slower step, made his way toward the group on the left, saying as he went, "Pardon, mesdames. Pardon, pardon, mesdames." And steering skillfully through the sea of laces, tulle, and ribbons, without catching a feather, placed her in a chair after a final turn, which gave a glimpse of her slender ankles in dainty blue stockings, while her train spread out like a fan and covered Kriven's knees. Korsunsky bowed, then straightened himself up and offered Kitty his arm to conduct her to Anna Arkadyevna. Kitty, blushing a little, freed Kriven from the folds of her train, and, just a trifle dizzy, looked around in search of Anna. Anna was not dressed in violet, as Kitty had hoped, but in a low-cut black velvet gown, which showed her plump shoulders and bosom smooth as ivory, her beautiful round arms, and her delicate slender wrists. Her robe was adorned with Venetian guipure. On her head, gracefully set on her dark locks, was a little garland of heart's ease, and a similar bouquet was fastened in her black ribbon belt in the midst of white lace. Her hair, which was all her own, was dressed very simply. There was nothing remarkable about it except the abundance of the little natural curls, which strayed in fascinating disorder around her neck and temples. She wore a string of pearls around her firm throat. Kitty had seen Anna every day and had fallen in love with her, but now that she saw her dressed in black, instead of the violet which she had expected, she was conscious that she had never before appreciated her full beauty. She saw her in a new and unexpected light. Now she realized that violet would not have been becoming to her, and that her charm consisted entirely of her independence of toilette. That her toilette was only an accessory, and her black gown with the magnificent laces was only an accessory, was only a frame for her, and nothing else was to be thought of but herself in all her simplicity, naturalness, elegance, and at the same time her gaiety and animation. When Kitty joined her, she was standing in her usual erect attitude, talking with the master of the house, her head slightly bent toward him. "No, I would not cast the first stone, though I don't understand about it," she was saying to him, slightly shrugging her shoulders, and then perceiving Kitty, she turned to her with an affectionate and reassuring smile. With a woman's quick intuition, she saw all the beauty of the young girl's toilette, and gave her an appreciative nod, which Kitty understood. "You even dance into the ballroom," she said. "She is the most faithful of my aides," said Korsunsky, addressing Anna Arkadyevna, whom he had not as yet seen. "The princess helps to make any ballroom gay and delightful. Anna Arkadyevna, will you take a turn?" he asked with a bow. "Ah, you are acquainted," said the host. "Who is it we don't know? My wife and I are like white wolves. Everybody knows us," replied Korsunsky. "A little waltz, Anna Arkadyevna?" "I don't dance when I can help it," she replied. "But you can't help it tonight," said Korsunsky. At this moment Vronsky joined them. "Well, if I can't help dancing, let us dance," said she, placing her hand on Korsunsky's shoulder and not replying to Vronsky's salutation. "Why is she vexed with him?" thought Kitty, noticing that Anna purposely paid no attention to Vronsky's bow. Vronsky joined Kitty, reminded her that she was engaged to him for the first quadrille, and expressed regret that he had not seen her for so long. Kitty, while she was looking with admiration at Anna as she waltzed, listened to Vronsky. She expected that he would invite her, but he did nothing of the sort, and she looked at him with astonishment. A flush came into his face, and he hastily suggested that they should waltz, but he had scarcely put his arm around her slender waist and taken the first step, when suddenly the music stopped. Kitty looked into his face, which was close to her own, and for many a long day, even after years had passed, the loving look which she gave him, and which he did not return, tore her heart with cruel shame. "Pardon, pardon, a waltz, cried Korsunsky at the other end of the ballroom, and, seizing the first young lady at hand, he began once more to dance. End of chapter 22. Part 1, Chapter 23 of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Translated by Nathan Haskell Doyle. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Marianne Spiegel. Vronsky took a few turns with Kitty, then she joined her mother. But she had time for only a few words with the Countess Nordstone, ere Vronsky came back to get her for the first quadrille. During the quadrille nothing of importance was said. Their conversation was first on Korsunsky and his wife, whom Vronsky described very amusingly as amiable children of 40 years, then on some private theatricals, and only once did his words give her a keen pang, when he asked if Levin were there, and added that he liked him very much. But Kitty counted little on the quadrille. She waited for the mazurka with a violent beating of the heart. She had a feeling that during the mazurka all would surely be settled. The fact that Vronsky did not ask her during the quadrille did not disturb her. She felt sure that she should be selected as his partner for the mazurka, as in all preceding balls, and she refused 5 invitations, saying that she was engaged. This whole ball, even to the last quadrille, seemed to Kitty like a magical dream, full of flowers, of joyous sounds, of movement. She did not cease to dance until her strength began to fail, and then she begged to rest a moment. But in dancing the last quadrille with one of those tiresome men whom she found it impossible to refuse, she found herself in the same set with Vronsky and Anna. Kitty had not fallen in with Anna since the beginning of the ball, and now again she suddenly saw her in another new and unexpected light. She seemed laboring under an excitement such as Kitty herself had experienced, that of success. She saw that Anna was excited and intoxicated with the wine of admiration. Kitty knew the sensation, knew the symptoms, and recognized them in Anna. She saw the feverish brilliancy of her, and the smile of happiness and excitement involuntarily parting her lips, and the harmony, precision, and grace of her movements. Who has caused it? She asked herself. All or one? She could not help her tormented partner in the conversation, the thread of which he had dropped and could not pick up again, and though she submitted with apparent good grace to the loud orders of Korsunsky, shouting "Ladies' chain" and "All hands around," she watched her closely, and her heart oppressed her more and more. No, it is not the approval of the crowd that has so intoxicated her, but the admiration of the one, and that one. Can it be he? Every time Vronsky spoke to Anna her eyes sparkled with pleasure, and a smile of happiness parted her rosy lips. She seemed to make an effort not to exhibit any signs of this joy, but nevertheless happiness was painted on her face. Can it be he? Thought Kitty. She looked at him, and was horror-struck. The sentiments that were reflected on Anna's face as in a mirror were also visible on his. Where were his coolness, his calm dignity, the repose which always marked his face? Now, as he addressed his partner, his head bent as if he were ready to worship her, and his look expressed at once humility and passion, as if it said, "I would not offend you. I would save myself, and how can I?" Such was the expression of his face, and she had never before seen it in him. They talked about their mutual acquaintances. Their conversation was made up of trifles, and yet Kitty felt that every word they spoke decided her fate. Strange as it might seem, although they really remarked how ridiculous Ivan Ivanovitch was in his efforts to speak French, and how Miss Fletskaya might have found a better match, nevertheless these words had for them a peculiar meaning, and they understood it just as well as Kitty did. In Kitty's mind, the whole ball, the whole evening, everything seemed enveloped in mist. Only the stern school of her education, serving her well, sustained her, and enabled her to do what was required of her, that is to say, to dance, to answer questions, to talk, even to smile. But even before the mazurka began, while they were arranging the chairs and a few couples were already starting to go from the smaller rooms to the great ballroom, a sudden attack of despair and terror seized her. She had refused 5 invitations, and now she had no partner, and there was no hope at all that she would be invited again, for the very reason that her social success would make it unlikely to occur to anyone that she would be without a partner. She would have to tell her mother that she was not feeling well and go home, but even this seemed impossible. She felt overwhelmed. She went into the farthest end of a small parlor and threw herself into an armchair. The airy skirts of her robe enveloped her delicate figure as in a cloud. One bare arm, as yet a little thin, but pretty, fell without energy, and lay in the folds of her rose-colored skirt. With the other she held her fan, and with quick, sharp motions tried to cool her heated face. But while she looked like a lovely butterfly caught amid grasses and ready to spread its rainbow-tinted wings, a horrible despair oppressed her heart. But perhaps I am mistaken. Perhaps it is not so. And again she recalled what she had seen. "Kitty, what does this mean?" said the Countess Nordstone, coming up to her with noiseless steps. Kitty's lower lip quivered. She hastily rose. "Kitty, aren't you dancing the mazurka?" "No, no," she replied with a trembling voice, almost in tears. "I heard him invite her for the mazurka," said the Countess, knowing that Kitty would know whom she meant. She said, "What, aren't you going to dance with the Princess Shtcherbatskaya?" "Oh, it's all one to me," said Kitty. No one besides herself realized her position. No one knew that she had refused a man who perhaps she loved, refused him because she preferred someone else. The Countess Nordstone went in search of Korsunsky, who was her partner for the mazurka, and sent him to invite Kitty. Kitty danced in the first figure, and fortunately was not required to talk, because Korsunsky was obliged to be ubiquitous, making his arrangements in his little kingdom. Vronsky and Anna were sitting nearly opposite her. She saw them sometimes near, sometimes at a distance, as their turn brought them into the figures. And as she watched them, she felt more and more certain that her unhappiness was complete. She saw that they felt themselves alone even in the midst of the crowded ballroom. And on Vronsky's face, usually so impassive and calm, she remarked that mingled expression of humility and fear, which strikes one in an intelligent dog, conscious of having done wrong. If Anna smiled, his smile replied. If she became thoughtful, he looked serious. An almost supernatural power seemed to attract Kitty's gaze to Anna's face. She was charming in her simple black velvet. Charming were her round arms, clasped by bracelets. Charming her firm neck, encircled with pearls. Charming her dark, curly locks breaking from restraint. Charming the slow and graceful movements of her small feet and hands. Charming her lovely face, full of animation. But in all this charm there was something terrible and cruel. Kitty admired her more than ever, and ever more and more her pain increased. She felt crushed, and her face told the story. When Vronsky passed her in some figure of the mazurka, he hardly knew her, so much had she changed. "Lovely ball," he said, so as to say something. "Yes," was her reply. Toward the middle of the mazurka, in going through a complicated figure recently invented by Korsunsky, Anna went to the center of the circle and called out 2 gentlemen and 2 ladies. Kitty was one. As she approached Anna, she looked at her in dismay. Anna, half shutting her eyes, looked at her with a smile and pressed her hand. Then, noticing that Kitty's face, replying to her smile, wore an expression of despair and amazement, she turned from her and began to talk to the other lady in animated tones. "Yes, there is some terrible, almost infernal attraction about her," said Kitty to herself. Anna did not wish to remain to supper, but the host insisted. "Do stay, Anna Arkadyevna," said Korsunsky, as she stood with her bare arm resting on the sleeve of his coat. "Such a cotillion I have in mind, un beau jeu." And the master of the house, looking on with a smile, encouraged his efforts to detain her. "No, I cannot stay," said Anna, also smiling, but in spite of her smile, the 2 men understood by the determination in her voice that she would not stay. "No, for I have danced here in Moscow at this single ball more than all winter in Petersburg," said she, looking at Vronsky, who was standing near. "One must rest before a journey." "And so you are really going back tomorrow?" he asked. "Yes, I think so," replied Anna, as if surprised at the boldness of his question. But as she said this to him, the brilliancy of her eyes and of her smile set his heart on fire. Anna Arkadyevna did not stay for supper, but took her departure. End of chapter 23. Part 1, Chapter 24 of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Translated by Nathan Haskell Doyle. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Marianne Spiegel. Yes, there must be something repellent, even repulsive, about me, thought Levin, as he left the Sherbatskys and went on foot in search of his brother. I am not popular with men. They say it is pride. No, I am not proud. If I had been proud, I should not have put myself in my present situation. And he imagined himself Vronsky, happy, popular, calm, witty, who had apparently never put himself in such a terrible position as he was in that evening. Yes, she naturally chose him, and I have no right to complain about any one or anything. I myself am to blame. What right had I to think that she would ever unite her life with mine? Who am I? And what am I? A man useful to no one, a good-for-nothing. Then the memory of his brother Nikolai came back to him. Was he not right in saying that everything in the world was miserable and wretched? Have we been, and are we, just in our judgment of our brother Nikolai? Of course, from the point of view of Prokofy, who saw him drunk and in ragged clothes, he is a miserable creature, but I judge him differently. I know his heart, and I know that we are alike. And I, instead of going to find him, have been out dining, and to this reception." Levin went to a street lamp and read his brother's address, which was written on a slip of paper and called an izvozchik. All the long way he vividly recalled one by one the well-known incidents of his brother Nikolai's life. He remembered how at the university, and for a year after his graduation, he had lived like a monk, notwithstanding the ridicule of his comrades, strictly devoted to all forms of religion, services, fasts, turning his back on all pleasures, and especially women. And then how he had suddenly turned around and fallen into the company of people of the lowest lives, and entered upon a course of dissipation and debauchery. He remembered his conduct toward a lad whom he had taken from the country to bring up, and whom he whipped so severely in a fit of anger that he narrowly escaped being transported for mayhem. He remembered his conduct toward a swindler to whom he owed a gambling debt, and in payment of it had given him his note, and whom he had caused to be arrested on the charge of cheating him. This was, in fact, money that Sergei Ivanovitch had just paid. Then he remembered the night spent by Nikolai at the station house on account of a spree. He remembered the scandalous lawsuit against his brother Sergei Ivanovitch, because Sergei had refused to pay his share of their mother's estate. And finally he recalled his last adventure, when after he had gone to take a position at the western frontier, he was dismissed for assaulting a superior. All this was detestable, but it did not seem nearly so odious to Levin as it would have been to those who did not know Nikolai, did not know his history, did not know his heart. Levin remembered how at the time when Nikolai was occupied with his devotions, his fastings, his priests, his ecclesiastical observances, when he was seeking to curb his passionate nature by religion, no one had aided him, but on the contrary, everyone, even himself, had made sport of him. They had mocked him, nicknamed him Noah, the monk. Then, when he had fallen, no one had helped him, but all had turned from him with horror and disgust. Levin felt that his brother Nikolai, at the bottom of his heart, in spite of all the deformity of his life, was not so very much worse than those who despised him. He was not to blame for having been born with his unrestrainable character and his peculiarities of intellect. He had always had good impulses. "I will tell him everything, and I will make him tell me everything, and show him that I love him, and therefore understand him," said Levin to himself, and about 11 o'clock in the evening he bade the driver take him to the hotel indicated in the address. "Upstairs, numbers 12 and 13, said the Swiss in reply to Levin's question. "Is he at home?" "Probably." The door of number 12 was half open, and from the room came the dense fumes of cheap, poor tobacco, and a voice unknown to Levin was heard speaking. But Levin instantly knew his brother was there. He recognized his cough. When he reached the door, the unknown voice was saying, "All depends on whether the affair is conducted in a proper and rational manner." Konstantin Levin glanced through the doorway and saw that the speaker was a young man in a peasant's sleeveless coat and with an enormous mop of hair on his head. On the divan was sitting a young woman with pock-marked face and dressed in a woolen gown without collar or cuffs. His brother was not to be seen. A pain shot through Konstantin's heart to think of the strange people with whom his brother associated. No one heard him, and, while he was removing his galoshes, he listened to what the man in the sleeveless coat was saying. He was speaking of some enterprise. "Well, the devil take the privileged classes," said his brother's voice after a fit of coughing. "Masha, see if you can get us something to eat and bring some wine if there's any left. If not, go for some." The woman arose, and as she came out from behind the screen, she saw Konstantin. "A gentleman here, Nikolai Dmitrich," she cried. "What is wanted?" said the voice of Nikolai Levin angrily. "It's I," replied Konstantin, appearing at the door. "Who's I?" repeated Nikolai's voice, still more angrily. Then he was heard quickly rising and stumbling against something, and Konstantin saw before him at the door his brother's well-known figure, still remarkable by reason of his shyness and ill health, infirm, tall, thin, and bent, with great startled eyes. He was still thinner than when Constantine had last seen him 3 years before. He wore a short overcoat. His hands and his bony frame seemed to him more colossal than ever. His hair was grown thinner, but the same stiff moustaches hid his lips, the same eyes glared at his visitor uncannily and naively. "Ah, Kostya!" he cried suddenly, recognizing his brother, and his eyes shone with joy. But the same instant he fixed his eyes on the younger man and made a quick, convulsive motion of his head and neck, as if his cravat choked him, a gesture well known to Constantine, and an entirely different expression, wild and bitter and expressive of martyrdom, came into his sunken face. "I wrote to both you and Sergey Ivanovitch that I do not know you, nor wish to know you. What do you want? What does either of you want?" He was not at all as Constantine had imagined him. The hardest and vilest elements of his character, which had made any relations with him difficult, had faded from Konstantin Levin's memory whenever he thought about him. And now, when he saw his face and the characteristic convulsive motions of his head, he remembered it all. "But I wanted nothing of you except to see you," he replied timidly. "I only came to see you." His brother's diffidence apparently disarmed Nikolai. His lips relaxed. "Ah, did you?" said he. "Well, come in. Sit down. Do you want some supper? Masha, bring enough for 3. No, hold on. Do you know who this is?" he asked his brother, pointing to the young man in the peasant coat. "This gentleman is Mr. Krisky, a friend of mine from Kiev, a very remarkable man. It seems the police are after him because he is not a coward." And he looked, as his habit was, at all who were in the room. Then, seeing that the woman, who stood at the door, was about to leave, he shouted, "Wait, I tell you!" Then, in his extravagant, incoherent manner of speech, which Constantine knew so well, he began to tell his brother the whole story of Krisky's life, how he had been driven from the university because he had tried to found an aid society and Sunday schools among the students, how afterwards he had been appointed teacher in one of the public schools, only to be dismissed, and how finally he had been tried for something or other. "Were you at the University of Kiev?" asked Konstantin of Krisky, in order to break the awkward silence that followed. "Yes, I was at Kiev," replied Krisky curtly, with a frown. "And this woman," cried Nikolai Levin, pointing to the girl, "is the companion of my life, Marya Nikolayevna. I took her from a house," he said, stretching out his neck, "but I love her, and I esteem her. And all who want to know me," he added, raising his voice and scowling, "must love her and esteem her. She is just the same as my wife, just the same. So now you know with whom you have to do. And if you think that you lower yourself, there's the door." And again his eyes looked at them all questioningly. "I do not understand how I should lower myself." "All right. Masha, bring up enough for 3. Some vodka and wine. No, wait. No matter, though. Go." End of chapter 24. Part 1, Chapter 25 of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Translated by Nathan Haskell Doyle. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Marianne Spiegel. "As you see," continued Nikolai Levin, frowning and speaking with effort. It was evidently hard for him to make up his mind what to do or say. "But do you see?" And he pointed to the corner of the room, where lay some iron bars attached to straps. "Do you see that? That is the beginning of a new work which we are undertaking. The work belongs to a productive labor association." Konstantin scarcely listened. He was looking at his brother's sick, consumptive face, and he grew more and more sorry for him, and he could not compel himself to listen to what his brother was saying about the labor association. He saw that the labor association was only an anchor of safety to keep him from absolute self-abasement. Nikolai went on to say, "You know that capital is crushing the laborer. With us the laboring classes, the muzhiks, bear the whole weight of toil, and no matter how they exert themselves, they can never get above their cattle-like condition. All the profits created by their productive labor, by which they could better their lot and procure for themselves leisure and therefore instruction, all their superfluous profits are swallowed up by the capitalists, and society is so constituted that, the harder they work, the more the proprietors and the merchants fatten at their expense, while they remain beasts of burden still. And this order of things must be changed, said he, in conclusion, and looking questioningly at his brother. Yes, of course, replied Constantine, looking at the pink spots which burned in his brother's hallowed cheeks. And now we are organizing an artel of locksmiths where we will all be in common, work, profits, even the tools. Where will this artel be situated? Asked Constantine. In the village of Vozdremo, government of Kazan. Yes, but why in a village? In the villages, it seems to me, there is plenty of work. Why associated locksmiths in a village? Because the muzhiks are serfs, just as much as they ever were, and you and Sergei Ivanovitch don't like it because we want to free them from this slavery, replied Nikolai, vexed by his brother's question. While he spoke, Constantine was looking about the melancholy, dirty room. He sighed, and his sighs seemed to make Nikolai still more angry. I know the aristocratic prejudices of such men as you and Sergei Ivanovitch. I know that he is spending all the strength of his mind in defense of the evils that crush us. No, but why do you speak of Sergei Ivanovitch? Asked Levin, smiling. Sergei Ivanovitch. This is why, cried Nikolai, at the mention of Sergei Ivanovitch. This is why. Yet, what is the good? Tell me this. What did you come here for? You despise all this. Very good. Go away, for God's sake, he cried, rising from his chair. Go away. Go away. I don't despise anything, said Constantine gently. I only refrain from discussing. At this moment Marya Nikolaevna came in. Nikolai looked up at her angrily, but she quickly stepped up to him and whispered a few words in his ear. I am not well. I become easily irritable, he explained, growing calmer and breathing with difficulty. And you just spoke to me about Sergei Ivanovitch and his article. It is so rubbishy, so idle, so full of error. How can a man who knows nothing about justice write about it? Have you read his article? Said he, turning to Krisky, and then, going to the table, he brushed off the half-rolled cigarettes so as to clear away a little space. I have not read it, replied Krisky, gloomily, evidently not wishing to take part in the conversation. Why? Cried Nikolai, irritably, still addressing Krisky. Because I don't consider it necessary to waste my time on it. That is, excuse me, how do you know that it would be a waste of time? For many people this article is inaccessible, because it is above them. But I find it different. I see the thoughts through and through, and know wherein it is weak. No one replied. Krisky slowly arose and took his hat. Won't you take some lunch? Well, good-bye. Come tomorrow with the locksmith. Krisky had hardly left the room when Nikolai smiled and winked. He is to be pitied, but I see. Just at that instant Krisky, calling at the door, interrupted him. What do you want? He asked, joining him in the corridor. Left alone with Marya Nikolaevna, Levin said to her, Have you been long with my brother? This is the 2nd year. His health has become very feeble. He drinks a great deal, she said. What do you mean? He drinks vodka, and it is bad for him. Does he drink too much? Yes, said she, timidly looking toward the door where Nikolai Levin was just entering. What were you talking about? He demanded with a scowl, and looking from one to the other with angry eyes. Tell me. Oh, nothing, replied Constantine in confusion. You don't want to answer? All right, don't. But you have no business to be talking with her. She is a girl. You a gentleman, he shouted, craning out his neck. I see that you have understood everything and judged everything, and you look with grief on the errors of my ways. He went on speaking, raising his voice. Nikolai Dmitrich, whispered Marya Nikolaevna, coming close to him. Well, very good, very good. Supper, then? Ah, here it is, he said, seeing a servant entering with a platter. Here, put it here, he said crossly. Then taking the vodka, he poured himself out a glass and drank it eagerly. Will you have a drink? He asked his brother, immediately growing lively. Well, No more about Sergei Ivanovitch. I am very glad to see you. No matter what people say, we are no longer strangers. Come now, drink. Tell me what you are doing," he said, greedily munching a piece of bread and pouring out a second glass. "How are you living?" "I live alone in the country, as I always have, and busy myself with farming," replied Konstantin, looking with terror at the eagerness with which his brother ate and drank, and trying to hide his impressions. "Why don't you get married?" "I have not come to that yet," replied Konstantin, turning red. "Why so? For me, it's all over. I have wasted my life. This I have said, and always shall say, that if they had given me my share of the estate when I needed it, my whole life would have been different." Konstantin hastened to change the conversation. "Did you know that your Vanyushka is with me at Prokofskoye as a bookkeeper?" he said. Nikolai craned out his head and wondered. "Yes, tell me what is doing at Prokofskoye. Is the house just the same, and the birch trees, and our study room? Is Philip, the gardener, still alive? How I remember the summer house and the divan. Just look here. Don't let anything in the house be changed, but hurry up and get married, and begin to live as you used to. Then I will come to visit you if your wife will be kind." "Then come back with me now," said Konstantin. "How well we should get on together." "I would come if I knew I should not meet Sergei Ivanovitch." "You will not meet him. I live absolutely independent of him." "Yes, but whatever you say, you must choose between him and me," said Nikolai, looking timorously in his brother's eyes. This timidity touched Konstantin. "If you want to hear my whole confession as to this matter, I will tell you that I take sides neither with you nor with him in your quarrel. You are both in the wrong. But in your case the wrong is external, while in his the wrong is inward." "Ha, ha! Do you understand it? Do you understand it?" cried Nikolai with an expression of joy. "But if you would like to know, personally I value your friendship higher because—" "Why? Why?" Konstantin could not say that it was because Nikolai was wretched and needed his friendship, but Nikolai understood that was the very thing he meant, and frowning darkly, he betook himself to the vodka. "Enough, Nikolai Dmitrich!" cried Marya Nikolaevna, laying her great pudgy hand on the decanter. "Let me alone. Don't bother me, or I'll strike you," he cried. Marya Nikolaevna smiled with her gentle and good-natured smile, which pacified Nikolai, and she took the vodka. "There! Do you think she does not understand things?" said Nikolai. "She understands this thing better than all you. Isn't there something about her good and gentle?" "Haven't you ever been to Moscow before?" said Konstantin, in order to say something to her. "There now, don't say you, to her. It frightens her. No one said view to her except the justice of the peace when they had her up because she wanted to escape from the house of ill fame where she was. My God, how senseless everything is in this world!" he suddenly exclaimed. "These new institutions, these justices of the peace, the zemstvo, what abominations!" And he began to relate his experiences with the new institutions. Konstantin listened to him, and the criticisms on the absurdity of the new institutions, which he had himself often expressed, now that he heard them from his brother's lips, seemed disagreeable to him. "We shall understand it all in the next world," he said jestingly. "In the next world? Ouch! I don't like your next world. I don't like it," he repeated, fixing his timid, haggard eyes on his brother's face. "And yet it would seem good to go from these abominations, these entanglements, from this unnatural state of things, from myself. But I'm afraid of death, horribly afraid of death." He shuddered. "There, drink something. Would you like some champagne? Or would you rather go out somewhere? Let's go and see the gypsies. You know I am very fond of gypsies and Russian songs." His speech had begun to grow thick, and he hurried from one subject to another. Konstantin, with Masha's aid, persuaded him to stay at home, and they put him on his bed completely drunk. Masha promised to write Konstantin in case of need, and to persuade Nikolai Levin to come and live with his brother. End of chapter 25. Part 1, Chapter 26 of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, translated by Nathan Haskell Doyle. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Marianne Spiegel. The next forenoon Levin left Moscow, and toward evening was at home. On the journey he talked with those near him in the train about politics, about the new railroads, and, just as in Moscow, he was overcome by the chaos of conflicting opinions, self-dissatisfaction, and a sense of shame. But when he got out at his station and perceived his one-eyed coachman, Ignat, with his kaftan collar turned up, when he saw, in the dim light that fell through the station windows, his covered sledge and his horses with their tied-up tails, and their harness with its rings and fringes, when Ignat, as he was tucking in the ropes, told him all the news of the village, about the coming of the contractor and how Pava the cow had calved, then it seemed to him that the chaos resolved itself a little, and his shame and dissatisfaction passed away. This he felt at the very sight of Ignat and his horses. But as soon as he had put on his sheepskin tulip, which he found in the sleigh, and took his seat in the sleigh comfortably wrapped up, and drove off thinking what arrangements he should have to make in the village, and at the same time examining off the horse, Donskaya, which used to be his saddle horse, a jaded but mettlesome steed, he began to view his experiences in an absolutely different light. He felt himself again, and no longer wished to be a different person. He only wished to be better than he had ever been before. In the first place, he resolved from that day forth that he would never expect extraordinary joys, such as marriage had promised to bring to him, and therefore he would never again despise the present. And, in the second place, he would never allow himself to be led away by low passion, the remembrances of which so tortured him while he was deciding to make his proposal. And lastly, as he thought of his brother Nikolai, he resolved that he would never again forget him, but that he would keep track of him and not let him out of sight, so that he might be in readiness to aid him whenever the evil moment arrived, and that seemed likely to be very soon. Then the conversation about communism, which he had so lightly treated with his brother, came back to him and made him reflect. A reform of economic conditions seemed to him nonsense, but he always felt the unfair difference between his own superfluity and the poverty of the people, and in order that he might feel perfectly right, he now vowed that though hitherto he had worked hard and lived economically, he would in the future work still harder and permit himself even less luxury than ever. And all this seemed to him so easy to accomplish that, throughout the drive from the station, he was the subject of the pleasantest illusions. With a hearty feeling of hope for a new and better life, he reached home just as the clock was striking 10. From the windows of the room occupied by his old nurse, Agafya Mikhailovna, who fulfilled the functions of housekeeper, the light fell on the snow-covered walk before his house. She was not yet asleep. Kuzma, wakened by her, hurried down, barefooted and sleepy, to open the door. Laska, the setter, almost knocking Kuzma down in her desire to get ahead of him, ran to meet her master and jumped upon him, trying to place her forepaws on his breast. "You are back very soon, Batyushka," said Agafya Mikhailovna. "I was bored, Agafya Mikhailovna. It is good to go visiting, but it's better at home," said he, and he went into his library. The library slowly grew light as the candle that was brought burnt up. The familiar details little by little came into sight: the great antlers, the shelves lined with books, the mirror, the stove with a hole which ought long ago to have been repaired, the ancestral divan, the great table, and on the table an open book, a broken ash-tray, a notebook filled with his writing. As he saw all these things, for a moment the doubt arose in his mind if it would be possible to bring about this new life which he had dreamed of during his journey. All these signs of his past seemed to say to him, "No, thou shalt not leave us, thou shalt not become another, but thou shalt still be as thou hast always been, with thy doubts, thy everlasting self-dissatisfaction, thy idle efforts at reform, thy failures, and thy perpetual strivings for a happiness which will never be thine." But while these external objects spoke to him thus, a different voice whispered to his soul, bidding him cease to be a slave to his past, and declaring that a man has every possibility within him. And, listening to this voice, he went to one side of the room where he found two 40-pound dumbbells, and he began to practice his gymnastic exercises with them, endeavoring to bring himself into a condition of vigor. At the door there was a noise of steps. He hastily put down the dumbbells. The intendant came in and said that, thanks to God, everything was all right, but he confessed that the buckwheat in the new drawing-room had got burnt. This provoked Levin. This new drawing-room he had himself built and partially invented, but the intendant had been entirely opposed to it, and now he announced with ill-concealed triumph that the buckwheat was burnt. Levin was sure that it was because he had neglected the precautions 100 times suggested. He grew angry and reprimanded the intendant. But there was one fortunate and important event. Pava, his best, his most beautiful cow, which he had bought at the cattle show, had calved. "Kuzma, give me my tulip. And you," he said to the intendant, "get a lantern. I will go and see her." The stable for the cattle was immediately behind the house. Crossing the courtyard, where the snow was heaped under the lilac bushes, he stepped up to the stable. As he opened the frosty door, he was met by the warm fumes of manure, and the cows, astonished at the untaught light of the lantern, stirred on their fresh straw. The light fell upon the broad black back of his piebald Holland cow. Berkut, the bull, with a ring in his nose, tried to get to his feet, but changed his mind, and only snorted as they passed by. The beautiful Pava, huge as a hippopotamus, was lying near her calf, snuffing at it, and protecting it against those who would come too close. Levin entered the stall, examined Pava, and lifted the calf, spotted with red and white, on its long awkward legs. Pava began to low with anxiety, but was reassured when the calf was restored to her, and began to lick it with her rough tongue. The calf hid its nose under its mother's side, and frisked its tail. "Bring the light this way, Fyodor, this way," said Levin, examining the calf. "Like its mother, but its color is like the sire's. Very pretty. Long hair and prettily spotted. Vasily Fyodorovitch, isn't it a beauty?" he said, turning to his intendant, forgetting, in his joy over the newborn calf, the grief caused by the burning of his wheat. "Why should it be homely? But Semyon, the contractor, was here the day after you left. It will be necessary to come to terms with him, Konstantin Dmitrich," replied the intendant. "I have already spoken to you about the machine." This single phrase brought Levin back to all the details of his enterprise, which was great and complicated. And from the stable he went directly to the office, and after a long conversation with the intendant and Semyon, the contractor, he went back to the house and marched straight up to the drawing-room. End of chapter 26. Part 1, Chapter 27 of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, translated by Nathan Haskell Doyle. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Marianne Spiegel. Levin's house was old and large, but, though he lived there alone, he occupied and warmed the whole of it. He knew that this was ridiculous. He knew that it was bad and contrary to his new plans, but this house was a world in itself to him. It was a world where his father and mother had lived and died. They had lived a life which, for Levin, seemed the ideal of all perfection, and which he dreamed of renewing with his own wife, with his own family. Levin scarcely remembered his mother, but this remembrance was sacred, and his future wife, as he imagined her, was to be the counterpart of the ideally charming and adorable woman, his mother. For him, the love of a woman could not exist outside of marriage, but he imagined the family relationship first, and only afterwards the woman who would be the center of the family. His ideas about marriage were therefore essentially different from those held by the majority of his friends, for whom it was only one of innumerable social affairs. For Levin, it was the most important act of his life, whereon all his happiness depended, and now he must renounce it. When he entered the little parlor where he always took tea, and threw himself into his armchair with a book, while Agafya Mikhailovna brought him his cup, and sat near the window, saying as usual, "Well, I'll sit down, Batyushka," then he felt, strangely enough, that he had not renounced his daydreams, and that he could not live without them. Were it Kitty or another, still it would be. He read his book, had his mind on what he was reading, pausing occasionally to listen to Agafya Mikhailovna's unceasing prattle, but his imagination was all the time filled with those varied pictures of family happiness which hovered before him. He felt that in the depths of his soul some change, some modification, some crystallization was taking place. He listened while Agafya Mikhailovna told how Prokhor had forgotten God, and, instead of buying a horse with the money which Levin had given him, had taken it and gone on a spree, and beaten his wife almost to death. And while he listened he read his book, and again caught the thread of his thoughts, awakened by his reading. It was a book by Tyndall on heat. He remembered his criticisms on Tyndall's self-satisfaction in the cleverness of his management of his experiments and on his lack of philosophical views, and suddenly a happy thought crossed his mind. In 2 years I shall have 2 Holland cows, perhaps Pava herself will still be alive, and possibly a dozen of Berkut's daughters will have been added to the herd, just from these 3. Splendid. And again he picked up his book. Well, very good. Electricity and heat are one and the same thing. But could one quantity take the place of the other in the equations used to settle this problem? No. What then? The bond between all forces of nature is felt, like instinct. When Pava's daughter grows into a cow with red and white spots, what a herd I shall have with those 3. Admirable. And my wife and I will go out with our guests to see the herd come in, and my wife will say, "Kostya and I have brought this calf up just like a child." "How can this interest you so?" the guests will say. "All that interests him interests me also." But who will she be? And he began to think of what happened in Moscow. Well, what is to be done about it? I am not to blame, but now everything will be different. It is foolishness to let one's past life dominate the present. One must struggle to live better, much better. He raised his head and sank into thought. Old Alaska, who had not yet got over her delight at her master's return, had been barking up and down the courtyard. She came into the room, wagging her tail and bringing the freshness of the open air, and thrust her head under his hand and begged for a caress, whining plaintively. "She almost talks," said Agafya Mikhailovna. "She is only a dog, but she knows just as well that her master has come home and is sad." "Why sad?" "Da, don't I see it, Batyushka? It's time I knew how to read my masters. Grew up with my masters since they were children. No matter, Batyushka, your health is good and your conscience pure." Levin looked at her earnestly, in astonishment that she so divined his thoughts. "And shall I give you some more tea?" said she, and taking the cup, she went out. Laska continued to nestle her head in her master's hand. He caressed her, and then she curled herself up around his feet, like a ring, laying her head on one of her hind paws, and, as proof that all was arranged to suit her, she opened her mouth a little, let her tongue slip out between her aged teeth, and, with a gentle puffing of her lips, gave herself up to beatific repose. Levin followed all of her movements. "So will I," said he to himself. "So will I. No matter. All will be well." End of chapter 27. Part 1, Chapter 28 of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Translated by Nathan Haskell Doyle. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Marianne Spiegel. Early on the morning after the ball, Anna Arkadyevna sent her husband a telegram announcing that she was going to leave Moscow that day. "No, I must go," she said to her sister-in-law, in explanation of her change of plan, and her tone signified that she had just remembered something that demanded her instant attention. "No, it would be much better if I could go this morning." Stepan Arkadyevitch did not dine at home, but he agreed to be back at 7 o'clock to escort his sister to the train. Kitty did not put in an appearance, but sent word that she had a headache. Dolly and Anna dined alone with the children and the English governess. Either the children were fickle, or they were very sensitive and felt that Anna was not at all as she had been on the day when they had taken so kindly to her, that she no longer cared for them, for they suddenly ceased playing with their aunt, seemed to lose their affection for her, and cared very little that she was going away. Anna spent the whole morning in making the preparations for her departure. She wrote a few notes to her Moscow acquaintances, settled her accounts, and packed. To Dolly especially it seemed that she was not in a happy frame of mind, but in that state of mental agitation which Dolly knew from experience arose, not without excellent reason, from dissatisfaction with herself. After dinner Anna went to her room to dress, and Dolly followed her. "How strange you are to-day," said Dolly. "I? Do you think so? I am not strange, but I am cross. This is common with me. I should like to have a good cry. It is very silly, but it will pass away," said Anna, speaking quickly and hiding her blushing face in a little bag where she was packing her toilet articles and her handkerchiefs. Her eyes shone with tears which she could hardly keep back. "I was so loath to come away from Petersburg, and now I don't want to go back." "You came here, and you did a lovely thing," said Dolly, attentively observing her. Anna looked at her with eyes wet with tears. "Don't say that, Dolly. I have done nothing, and could do nothing. I often ask myself why people say things to spoil me. What have I done? What could I do? You found that your heart had enough love left to forgive. Without you, God knows what would have been. How fortunate you are, Anna," said Dolly. "All is serene and pure in your soul. Everyone has a skeleton in his closet, as the English say." "What skeleton have you, pray? In you everything is so serene." "I have mine," cried Anna suddenly, and an unexpected, crafty, mocking smile hovered over her lips in spite of her tears. "Well, in your case the skeleton must be a droll one and not grievous," replied Dolly with a smile. "No, it is grievous. Do you know why I go today and not tomorrow? This is a confession which weighs me down, but I wish to make it," said Anna decidedly, sitting down in an armchair and looking Dolly straight in the eyes. And to her astonishment she saw that Anna was blushing, even to her ears, even to the dark curls that played around the back of her neck. "Yes," Anna proceeded. "Do you know why Kitty did not come to dinner? She is jealous of me. I spoiled. It was through me that the ball last night was a torment and not a joy to her. But truly, truly, I was not to blame, or not much to blame," she said, with a special accent on the word nemnozko, not much. "Oh, how exactly you said that like Stiva," remarked Dolly, laughing. Anna was vexed. Oh, no, I am not like Stiva," said she, frowning. "I have told you this simply because I do not allow myself, for an instant, to doubt myself." But the very moment that she said these words, she perceived how untrue they were. She not only doubted herself, but she felt such emotion at the thought of Vronsky that she took her departure sooner than she otherwise would, so that she might not meet him again. "Yes, Stiva told me that you danced the mazurka with him, and that he. You cannot imagine how ridiculously it turned out. I thought only to help along the match, and suddenly it went exactly opposite. Perhaps against my will, I." She blushed and did not finish her sentence. "Oh, these things are felt instantly," said Dolly. "I should be in despair if I felt that there was anything serious on his part," interrupted Anna. "But I am convinced that all this will be quickly forgotten, and that Kitty will not long be angry with me. In the first place, Anna, to tell the truth, I should not be very sorry if this marriage fell through. It would be vastly better for it to stop right here if Vronsky can fall in love with you in a single day." "Oh, heavens! That would be so idiotic, said Anna, and again an intense blush of satisfaction overspread her face at hearing the thought that occupied her expressed in words. And that is why I go away, after making an enemy of Kitty, whom I love so dearly. Oh, how sweet she is! But you will arrange that, Dolly, won't you? Dolly could hardly refrain from smiling. She loved Anna, but it was pleasant to her to discover that she also had her weaknesses. An enemy? That cannot be. And I should have been so glad to have you all love me as I love you. But now I love you all the more than ever, said Anna, with tears in her eyes. Oh, how absurd I am today. She passed her handkerchief over her eyes and began to get ready. At the very moment of her departure came Stepan Arkadyevitch with rosy, happy face and an odor of wine and cigars. Anna's tender-heartedness had communicated itself to Dolly, and, when she kissed her for the last time, she whispered, "Think, Anna, what you have done for me. I shall never forget. And remember that I love you, and always shall love you as my best friend." "I don't understand why," replied Anna, kissing her and struggling with her tears. "You have understood me, and you do understand me. Farewell, my dearest." End of chapter 28. Part 1, Chapter 29 of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, translated by Nathan Haskell Doyle. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Marianne Spiegel. Well, all is over, and thank the Lord, was Anna's first thought after she had said good-bye to her brother, who had blocked up the entrance to the railway carriage even after the third bell had rung. She sat down on the divanchik next Annushka, her maid, and began to examine the feebly lighted compartment. Thank the Lord! Tomorrow I shall see Seroza and Alexey Alexandrovitch, and my good and commonplace life will begin again as of old. With the same mental preoccupation that had possessed her all that day, Anna found a satisfaction in attending minutely to the arrangement.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to find out how to volunteer, please contact LibriVox.org. Thus Spake Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. Translated by Thomas Common. Zarathustra's Prologue. 1. When Zarathustra was 30 years old, he left his home, and the lake of his home, and went into the mountains. There he enjoyed his spirit and solitude, and for 10 years did not weary of it. But at last his heart changed, and rising one morning with the rosy dawn, he went before the sun, and spake thus unto it. Thou great star, what would be thy happiness, if thou hadst not those for whom thou shinest? For 10 years hast thou climbed hither unto my cave. Thou wouldst have wearied of thy light, and of the journey, had it not been for me, mine eagle, and my serpent. But we awaited thee every morning, took from thee thine overflow, and blessed thee for it. Lo, I am weary of my wisdom, like the bee that hath gathered too much honey. I need hands outstretched to take it. I would fain bestow and distribute, until the wise have once more become joyous in their folly, and the poor happy in their riches. Therefore must I descend into the deep, as thou doest in the evening, when thou goest behind the sea, and givest light also to the netherworld, thou exuberant star. Like thee must I go down, as men say, to whom I shall descend. Bless me then, thou tranquil eye, that canst behold even the greatest happiness without envy. Bless the cup that is about to overflow, that the water may flow golden out of it, and carry everywhere the reflection of thy bliss. Lo, this cup is again going to empty itself, and Zarathustra is again going to be a man. Thus began Zarathustra's downgoing. 2. Zarathustra went down the mountain alone, no one meeting him. When he entered the forest, however, there suddenly stood before him an old man, who had left his holy cot to seek roots. And thus spake the old man to Zarathustra. No stranger to me is this wanderer. Many years ago passed he by. Zarathustra he was called, but he hath altered. Then thou carriest thine ashes into the mountain. Wilt thou now carry thy fire into the valleys? Fearest thou not the incendiary's doom? Yea, I recognize Zarathustra. Pure is his eye, and no loathing lurketh about his mouth. Goeth he not along like a dancer? Altered is Zarathustra. A child hath Zarathustra become. An awakened one is Zarathustra. What wilt thou do in the land of the sleepers? As in the sea hast thou lived in solitude, and it hath borne thee up. Alas, wilt thou now go ashore? Alas, wilt thou again drag thy body thyself? Zarathustra answered, I love mankind. Why, said the saint, did I go into the forest and the desert? Was it not because I loved men far too well? Now I love God. Men I do not love. Man is a thing too imperfect for me. Love to man would be fatal to me. Zarathustra answered, What spake I of love? I am bringing gifts unto men. Give them nothing, said the saint. Take rather part of their load, and carry it along with them. That will be most agreeable unto them, if only it be agreeable unto thee. If, however, thou wilt give unto them, give them no more than an alms, and let them also beg for it. No, replied Zarathustra, I give no alms. I am not poor enough for that. The saint laughed at Zarathustra, and spake thus, Then see to it that they accept thy treasures. They are distrustful of anchorites, and do not believe that we come with gifts. The fall of our footsteps ringeth too hollow through their streets. And, just as at night, when they are in bed and hear a man abroad long before sunrise, so they ask themselves concerning us, Where goeth the thief? Go not to men, but stay in the forest. Go rather to the animals. Why not be like me? A bear amongst bears, a bird amongst birds. And what doeth the saint in the forest? Asked Zarathustra. The saint answered, I make hymns and sing them, and in making hymns I laugh and weep and mumble. Thus do I praise God. With singing, weeping, laughing, and mumbling do I praise the God who is my God. But what dost thou bring us as a gift? When Zarathustra had heard these words, he bowed to the saint and said, What should I have to give thee? Let me rather hurry hence, lest I take aught away from thee. And thus they parted from one another, the old man and Zarathustra, laughing like schoolboys. When Zarathustra was alone, however, he said to his heart, Could it be possible? This old saint in the forest hath not yet heard of it, that God is dead. 3. When Zarathustra arrived at the nearest town, which adjoineth the forest, he found many people assembled in the marketplace, for it had been announced that a rope dancer would give a performance. And Zarathustra spake thus unto the people, I teach you the Superman. Man is something that is to be surpassed. What have ye done to surpass man? All beings hitherto have created something beyond themselves, and ye want to be the ebb of that great tide, and would rather go back to the beast than surpass man? What is the ape to man? A laughingstock, a thing of shame. And just the same shall man be to the Superman, a laughingstock, a thing of shame. Ye have made your way from the worm to man, and much within you is still worm. Once were ye apes, and even yet man is more of an ape than any of the apes. Even the wisest among you is only a disharmony and hybrid of plant and phantom. But do I bid you become phantoms or plants? Lo, I teach you the Superman. The Superman is the meaning of the earth. Let your will say, the Superman shall be the meaning of the earth. I conjure you, my brethren, remain true to the earth, and believe not those who speak unto you of super-earthly hopes. Poisoners are they, whether they know it or not. Despisers of life are they, decaying ones, and poisoned ones themselves, of whom the earth is wary. So away with them. Once, blasphemy against God was the greatest blasphemy. But God died, and therewith also those blasphemers. To blaspheme the earth is now the dreadfulest sin, and to rate the heart of the unknowable higher than the meaning of the earth. Once the soul looked contemptuously on the body, and then that contempt was the supreme thing. The soul wished the body meager, ghastly, and famished. Thus it thought to escape from the body and the earth. Oh, that the soul was itself meager, ghastly, and famished, and cruelty was the delight of that soul. But ye also, my brethren, tell me, what doth your body say about your soul? Is your soul not poverty and pollution and wretched self-complacency? Verily, a polluted stream is man. One must be a sea to receive a polluted stream without becoming impure. Lo, I teach you the Superman. He is that sea. In him can your great contempt be submerged. What is the greatest thing ye can experience? It is the hour of great contempt, the hour in which even your happiness becometh loathsome unto you, and so also your reason and virtue. The hour when ye say, what good is my happiness? It is poverty and pollution and wretched self-complacency. But my happiness should justify existence itself. The hour when you say, what good is my reason? Doth it long for knowledge as the lion for his food? It is poverty and pollution and wretched self-complacency. The hour when ye say, what good is my virtue? And yet it hath not made me passionate. How weary I am of my good and my bad. It is all poverty and pollution and wretched self-complacency. The hour when ye say, what good is my justice? I do not see that I am fervor and fuel. The just, however, are fervor and fuel. The hour when ye say, what good is my pity? Is not pity the cross on which he is nailed who loveth man? But my pity is not a crucifixion. Have ye ever spoken thus? Have ye ever cried thus? Ah, would that I had heard you crying thus. It is not your sin. It is your self-satisfaction that crieth unto heaven. Your very sparingness in sin crieth unto heaven. Where is the lightning to lick you with its tongue? Where is the frenzy with which ye should be inoculated? Lo, I teach you the Superman. He is that lightning. He is that frenzy. When Zarathustra had thus spoken, one of the people called out, we have now heard enough of the rope dancer. It is time now for us to see him. And all the people laughed at Zarathustra. But the rope dancer, who thought the words applied to him, began his performance. 4. Zarathustra, however, looked at the people and wondered. Then he spake thus, man is a rope stretched between the animal and the Superman, a rope over an abyss, a dangerous crossing, a dangerous wayfaring, a dangerous looking back, a dangerous trembling and halting. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal. What is lovable in man is that he is an overgoing and a down-going. I love those that know not how to live except as down-goers, for they are the overgoers. I love the great despisers, because they are the great adorers, and arrows of longing for the other shore. I love those who do not first seek a reason beyond the stars for going down and being sacrifices, but sacrifice themselves to the earth, that the earth of the Superman may hereafter arrive. I love him who liveth in order to know, and seeketh to know in order that the Superman may hereafter live. Thus seeketh he his own downgoing. I loveth him who laboureth and inventeth, that he may build the house for the Superman, and prepare for him earth, animal, and plant, for thus seeketh he his own downgoing. I love him who loveth his virtue, for virtue is the will to downgoing, and an arrow of longing. I love him who reserveth no share of spirit for himself, but wanteth to be wholly the spirit of his virtue. Thus walketh he as spirit over the bridge. I love him who maketh his virtue his inclination and destiny. Thus, for the sake of his virtue, he is willing to live on or live no more. I love him who desireth not too many virtues. One virtue is more of a virtue than two, because it is more of a knot for one's destiny to cling to. I love him whose soul is lavish, who wanteth no thanks and doth not give back. For he always bestoweth, and desireth not to keep for himself. I love him who is ashamed when the dice fall in his favor, and who then asketh, Am I a dishonest player? For he is willing to succumb. I love him who scattereth golden words in advance of his deeds, and always doeth more than he promiseth, for he seeketh his own downgoing. I love him who justifieth the future ones, and redeemeth the past ones, for he is willing to succumb through the present ones. I love him who chasteneth his God, because he loveth his God, for he must succumb through the wrath of his God. I love him whose soul is deep, even in the wounding, and may succumb through a small matter. Thus goeth he willingly over the bridge. I love him whose soul is so overfull that he forgetteth himself, and all things are in him. Thus all things become his downgoing. I love him who is of a free spirit and a free heart. Thus is his head only the bowels of his heart. His heart, however, causeth his downgoing. I love all who are like heavy drops falling one by one out of the dark cloud that lowereth over man. They herald the coming of the lightning, and succumb as heralds. Lo, I am a herald of the lightning, and a heavy drop out of the cloud. The lightning, however, is the Superman. 5. When Zarathustra had spoken these words, he again looked at the people, and was silent. There they stand, said he to his heart, there they laugh. They understand me not. I am not the mouth for these ears. Must one first batter their ears, that they may learn to hear with their eyes? Must one clatter like kettle drums and penitential preachers? Or do they only believe the stammerer? They have something whereof they are proud. What do they call it? That which maketh them proud? Culture they call it. It distinguisheth them from the goat herds. They dislike, therefore, to hear of contempt of themselves. So I will appeal to their pride. I will speak unto them of the most contemptible thing. That, however, is the last man. And thus spake Zarathustra unto the people. It is time for man to fix his goal. It is time for man to plant the germ of his highest hope. Still is his soil rich enough for it, but that soil will one day be poor and exhausted, and no lofty tree will any longer be able to grow thereon. Alas! There cometh the time when man will no longer launch the arrow of his longing beyond man, and the string of his bow will have unlearned to whiz. I tell you, one must still have chaos in one to give birth to a dancing star. I tell you, ye have still chaos in you. Alas, there cometh the time when man will no longer give birth to any star. Alas, there cometh the time of the most despicable man, who can no longer despise himself. Lo, I show you the last man. What is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star? So asketh the last man, and blinketh. The earth hath then become small, and on it there hoppeth the last man, who maketh everything small. His species is ineradicable, like that of the ground flea. The last man liveth longest. We have discovered happiness, say the last men, and blink thereby. They have left the regions where it is hard to live, for they need warmth. One still loveth one's neighbor, and rubbeth against him, for one needeth warmth. Turning ill and being distrustful, they consider sinful. They walk warily. He is a fool who still stumbleth over stones or men. A little poison now and then, that maketh pleasant dreams, and much poison at last for a pleasant death. One still worketh, for work is a pastime. But one is careful lest the pastime should hurt one. One no longer becometh poor or rich. Both are too burdensome. Who still wanteth to rule? Who still wanteth to obey? Both are too burdensome. No shepherd in one herd. Every one wanteth the same. Every one is equal. He who hath other sentiments goeth voluntarily into the madhouse. Formerly, all the world was insane, say the subtlest of them, and blink thereby. They are clever, and know all that hath happened, so there is no end to their raillery. People still fall out, but are soon reconciled. Otherwise it spoileth their stomachs. They have their little pleasures for the day, and their little pleasures for the night, but they have a regard for health. We have discovered happiness, say the last men, and blink thereby. And here ended the first discourse of Zarathustra, which is also called the prologue, for at this point the shouting and mirth of the multitude interrupted him. Give us this last man, O Zarathustra, they called out. Make us into these last men. Then will we make thee a present of the Superman. And all the people exulted and smacked their lips. Zarathustra, however, turned sad and said to his heart, They understand me not. I am not the mouth for these ears. Too long, perhaps, have I lived in the mountains. Too much have I hearkened unto the brooks and trees. Now do I speak unto them, as unto the goatherds. Calm is my soul, and clear, like the mountains in the morning. But they think me cold, and a mocker with terrible jests. And now do they look at me, and laugh. And while they laugh, they hate me too. There is ice in their laughter. 6. Then, however, something happened which made every mouth mute and every eye fixed. In the meantime, of course, the rope dancer had commenced his performance. He had come out at a little door, and was going along the rope, which was stretched between two towers, so that it hung above the marketplace and the people. When he was just midway across, the little door opened once more, and a gaudily dressed fellow, like a buffoon, sprang out, and went rapidly after the first one. "Go on, halt-foot!" cried his frightful voice. "Go on, lazy bones, interloper, sallow-face, lest I tickle thee with my heel. What dost thou here between the towers? And the tower is the place for thee. Thou shouldst be locked up. To one better than thyself thou blockest the way." And with every word he came nearer and nearer the first one. When, however, he was but a step behind, there happened the frightful thing which made every mouth mute and every eye fixed. He uttered a yell like a devil, and jumped over the other who was in his way. The latter, however, when he thus saw his rival triumph, lost at the same time his head and his footing on the rope, he threw his pole away, and shot downwards faster than it, like an eddy of arms and legs, into the depth. The marketplace and the people were like the sea when the storm cometh on. They all flew apart and in disorder, especially where the body was about to fall. Zarathustra, however, remained standing, and just beside him fell the body, badly injured and disfigured, but not yet dead. After a while, consciousness returned to the shattered man, and he saw Zarathustra kneeling beside him. "What art thou doing here?" said he at last. "I knew long ago that the devil would trip me up. Now he draggeth me to hell. Wilt thou prevent him?" "On mine honor, my friend," answered Zarathustra, "there is nothing of all that whereof thou speakest. There is no devil and no hell. Thy soul will be dead even sooner than thy body. Fear, therefore, nothing any more." The man looked up distrustfully. "If thou speakest the truth," said he, "I lose nothing when I lose my life. I am not much more than an animal which hath been taught to dance by blows and scanty fare." "Not at all," said Zarathustra. "Thou hast made danger thy calling. Therein there is nothing contemptible. Now thou perishest by thy calling. Therefore will I bury thee with mine own hands." When Zarathustra had said this, the dying one did not reply further, but he moved his hand as if he sought the hand of Zarathustra in gratitude. 7. Meanwhile the evening came on, and the marketplace veiled itself in gloom. Then the people dispersed, for even curiosity and terror became fatigued. Zarathustra, however, still sat beside the dead man on the ground, absorbed in thought. So he forgot the time. But at last it became night, and a cold wind blew upon the lonely one. Then arose Zarathustra, and said to his heart, "Verily, a fine catch of fish hath Zarathustra made today. It is not a man he hath caught, but a corpse. Sombre is human life, and as yet without meaning. A buffoon may be faithful to it. I want to teach men the sense of their existence, which is the Superman, the lightning out of the dark cloud. Man. But still am I far from them, and my sense speaketh not unto their sense. To men I am still something between a fool and a corpse. Gloomy is the night, gloomy are the ways of Zarathustra. Come, thou cold and stiff companion, I carry thee to the place where I shall bury thee with mine own hands." 8. When Zarathustra had said this to his heart, he put the corpse upon his shoulders and set out on his way. Yet he had not gone 100 steps, when there stole a man up to him, and whispered in his ear. And lo, he that spake was the buffoon from the tower. "Leave this town, O Zarathustra," said he. "There are too many here who hate thee. The good and just hate thee, and call thee their enemy and despiser. The believers in the orthodox belief hate thee, and call thee a danger to the multitude. It was thy good fortune to be laughed at, and verily thou spakest like a buffoon. It was thy good fortune to associate with the dead dog. By so humiliating thyself thou hast saved thy life today. Depart, however, from this town, or tomorrow I shall jump over thee, a living man over a dead one." And when he had said this, the buffoon vanished. Zarathustra, however, went on through the dark streets. At the gate of the town the grave diggers met him. They shone their torch on his face, and, recognizing Zarathustra, they sorely derided him. "Zarathustra is carrying away the dead dog. A fine thing that Zarathustra hath turned a grave digger, for our hands are too cleanly for that roast. Will Zarathustra steal the bite from the devil? Well then, good luck to the repast. If only the devil is not a better thief than Zarathustra. He will steal them both. He will eat them both." And they laughed among themselves, and put their heads together. Zarathustra made no answer thereto, but went on his way. When he had gone on for 2 hours, past forests and swamps, he had heard too much of the hungry howling of the wolves, and he himself became a hungry. So he halted at a lonely house in which the light was burning. Hunger attacketh me, said Zarathustra, like a robber. Among forests and swamps my hunger attacketh me, and late in the night. Strange humours hath my hunger. Often it cometh to me only after a repast, and all day it hath failed to come. Where hath it been? And thereupon Zarathustra knocked at the door of the house. An old man appeared, who carried a light, and asked, Who cometh unto me and my bad sleep? A living man and a dead one, said Zarathustra. Give me something to eat and drink. I forgot it during the day. He that feedeth the hungry refresheth his own soul, saith wisdom. The old man withdrew, but came back immediately and offered Zarathustra bread and wine. A bad country for the hungry, said he. That is why I live here. Animal and man come unto me, the anchorite. But bid thy companion eat and drink also. He is warier than thou. Zarathustra answered, My companion is dead. I shall hardly be able to persuade him to eat. That doth not concern me, said the old man sullenly. He that knocketh at my door must take what I offer him. Eat, and fare ye well. Thereafter Zarathustra again went on for 2 hours, trusting to the path and the light of the stars. For he was an experienced night walker, and liked to look into the face of all that slept. When the morning dawned, however, Zarathustra found himself in a thick forest, and no path was any longer visible. He then put the dead man in a hollow tree at his head, for he wanted to protect him from the wolves, and laid himself down to sleep on the ground and moss. And immediately he fell asleep, tired in body, but with a tranquil soul. 9. Long slept Zarathustra, and not only the rosy dawn passed over his head, but also the morning. At last, however, his eyes opened, and amazedly he gazed into the forest and the stillness. Amazedly he gazed into himself. Then he arose quickly, like a seafarer who all at once seeth the land, and he shouted for joy, for he saw a new truth, and he spake thus to his heart. A light hath dawned upon me. I need companions, living ones, not dead companions and corpses, which I carry with me where I will, but I need living companions, who will follow me because they want to follow themselves, and to the place where I will. A light hath dawned upon me. Not to the people is Zarathustra to speak, but to companions. Zarathustra shall not be the herd's herdsman and hound, to allure many from the herd. For that purpose have I come. The people and the herd must be angry with me. A robber shall Zarathustra be called by the herdsmen. Herdsmen, I say, but they call themselves the good and just. Herdsmen, I say, but they call themselves the believers in the orthodox belief. Behold the good and just. Whom do they hate most? Him who breaketh up their tables of values, the breaker, the lawbreaker. He, however, is the Creator. Behold the believers of all beliefs. Whom do they hate most? Him who breaketh up their tables of values, the breaker, the lawbreaker. He, however, is the Creator. Companions the Creator seeketh, not corpses, and not herds or believers either. Fellow creators the Creator seeketh, those who grave new values on new tables. Companions the Creator seeketh, and fellow reapers. For everything is ripe for the harvest with him. But he lacketh the 100 sickles. So he plucketh the ears of corn, and is vexed. Companions the Creator seeketh, and such as know how to whet their sickles. Destroyers will they be called, and despisers of good and evil. But they are the reapers and rejoicers. Fellow creators, Zarathustra seeketh. fellow reapers and fellow rejoicers, Zarathustra seeketh. What hath he to do with herds, and herdsmen, and corpses? And thou, my first companion, rest in peace. Well have I buried thee in thy hollow tree. Well have I hid thee from the wolves. But I part from thee, the time hath arrived. Twixt rosy dawn and rosy dawn there came unto me a new truth. I am not to be a herdsman, I am not to be a grave digger. Not any more will I discourse unto the people. For the last time have I spoken unto the dead. With the creators, the reapers, and the rejoicers will I associate. The rainbow will I show them, and all the stairs to the Superman. To the lone dweller will I sing my song, and to the twain dwellers, and unto him who hath still ears for the unheard, will I make the heart heavy with my happiness. I make for my goal, I follow my course. Over the loitering and tardy will I leap. Thus let my ongoing be their downgoing. 10. This had Zarathustra said to his heart, when the sun stood at noontide. Then he looked inquiringly aloft, for he heard above him the sharp call of a bird. And behold, an eagle swept through the air, in wide circles, and on it hung a serpent, not like a prey, but like a friend, for it kept itself coiled round the eagle's neck. They are mine animals, said Zarathustra, and rejoiced in his heart. The proudest animal under the sun, and the wisest animal under the sun. They have come out to reconnoiter. They want to know whether Zarathustra still liveth. Verily, do I still live? More dangerous have I found it among men than among animals. In dangerous paths goeth Zarathustra. Let mine animals lead me. When Zarathustra had said this, he remembered the words of the saint in the forest. Then he sighed and spake thus to his heart. Would that I were wiser! Would that I were wise from the very heart, like my serpent. But I am asking the impossible. Therefore do I ask my pride to go always with my wisdom. And if my wisdom should some day forsake me, alas, it loveth to fly away. May my pride then fly with my folly. Thus began Zarathustra's downgoing. End of Zarathustra's prologue. This recording is in the public domain.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Seth Woodworth. Seth.woodworth.googlepages.com. Moses Lake, Washington. Thus Spake Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. Translated by Thomas Common. Part 1, Chapter 1. The three metamorphoses of the spirit do I designate to you. How the spirit becometh a camel a lion, and the lion at last a child. Many heavy things are there for the spirit, the strong load-bearing spirit in which reverence dwelleth. For the heavy and the heaviest longeth his strength. What is heavy? So asketh the load-bearing spirit. Then kneeleth it down like the camel, and wanteth to be well laden. What is the heaviest thing, ye heroes? Asketh the load-bearing spirit, that I might take it upon me and rejoice in my strength. Is it not this, to humiliate oneself in order to mortify one's pride, to exhibit one's folly in order to mock at one's wisdom? Or is it this, to desert our cause when it celebrateth its triumph, to ascend high mountains to tempt the tempter? Or is it this, to feed on the acorns and grass of knowledge, and for the sake of truth to suffer hunger of soul? Or is it this, to be sick and dismiss comforters, and make friends of the deaf, who never hear thy requests? Or is it this, to go into foul water when it is the water of truth, not disclaim cold frogs and hot toads? Or is it this, to love those who despise us, and give one's hand to the phantom when it is going to frighten us? All these heaviest things the load-bearing spirit taketh upon itself, and like the camel, which, when laden, hasteneth into the wilderness, so hasteneth the spirit into its wilderness. But in the loneliest wilderness happeneth the second metamorphosis. Here the spirit becometh a lion. Freedom will capture it and lordship it in its own wilderness. Its last lord it here seeketh. Hostile will it be to him, and to last God, for victory will struggle with the great dragon. What is the great dragon which a spirit is no longer inclined to call Lord and God? Thou shalt is the great dragon called. But the spirit of the lion saith, I will. Thou shalt lieth in its path, sparkling with gold, a scale-covered beast, and on every scale glittereth golden thou shalt. The values of 1,000 years glitter on those scales, and thus speaketh the mightiest of all dragons. All the values of things glitter on me. All values have already been created, and all created values do I represent. Verily there shall be no I will any more. Thus speaketh the dragon. My brethren, wherefore is the need of the lion in the spirit? Why sufficeth not the beast of burden, which renounceth and is reverent, to create new values that even the lion cannot yet accomplish, but to create itself freedom for new creating, that can the might of the lion do? To create itself freedom, and give a holy nay even unto duty, for that, my brethren, there is need of a lion. To assume the right to new values, that is the most formidable assumption for load-bearing and reverent spirit. Verily into such a spirit it is praying, and the work of a beast of prey. As its holiest it once loved thou shalt, and now it is forced to find illusion and arbitrariness even in the holiest things, that may capture freedom from its love. The lion is needeth for this capture. But tell me, my brethren, what the child can do, which even the lion could not do. Why hath the preying lion still to become a child? Innocence is the child, and forgetfulness. A new beginning, a game, a self-rolling wheel, a first movement, a holy yea. Aye, for the game of creating, my brethren, there is needed a holy yea unto life. Its own will willeth now the spirit, his own world winneth the world's outcast. 3 metamorphoses of the spirit have I designated to you, how the spirit became a camel, the camel a lion, and the lion at last a child. Thus spake Zarathustra, and at the time he abode in a town which is called the Pied Cow. End of chapter 1.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to find out how to volunteer, please contact LibriVox.org. Thus Spake Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. Translated by Thomas Common. Part 1, Chapter 2. The Academic Chairs of Virtue. People commended unto Zarathustra a wise man, as one who could discourse well about sleep and virtue. Greatly was he honored and rewarded for it, and all the youths sat before his chair. To him went Zarathustra, and sat among the youths before his chair, and thus spake the wise man. Respect and modesty in presence of sleep. That is the first thing. And go out of the way of all who sleep badly, and keep awake at night. Modest is even the thief in the presence of sleep. He always stealeth softly through the night. Immodest, however, is the night watchman. Immodestly he carrieth his horn. No small art is it to sleep. It is necessary for that purpose, to keep awake all day. 10 times a day must thou overcome thyself. That causeth wholesome weariness, and is poppy to the soul. 10 times must thou reconcile again with thyself, for overcoming is bitterness, and badly sleep the unreconciled. 10 truths must thou find during the day, otherwise wilt thou seek truth during the night, and thy soul will have been hungry. 10 times must thou laugh during the day, and be cheerful, otherwise thy stomach, the father of affliction, will disturb thee in the night. Few people know it, but one must have all the virtues in order to sleep well. Shall I bear false witness? Shall I commit adultery? Shall I covet my neighbor's maidservant? All that would ill accord with good sleep. Even if one have all the virtues, there is still one thing needful: to send the virtues themselves to sleep at the right time, that they may not quarrel with one another, the good females. And about thee, thou unhappy one, peace with God and thy neighbor, so desireth good sleep, and peace also with thy neighbor's devil, otherwise it will haunt thee in the night. Honor to the government, and obedience, and also to the crooked government, so desireth good sleep. How can I help it, if power liketh to walk on crooked legs? He who leadeth his sheep to the greenest pasture shall always be for me the best shepherd, so doth it accord with good sleep. Many honors I want not, nor great treasures, they excite the spleen. But it is bad sleeping without a good name and a little treasure. A small company is more welcome to me than a bad one. But they must come and go at the right time, so doth it accord with good sleep. Well also do the poor in spirit please me. They promote sleep. Blessed are they, especially if one always give in to them. Thus passeth the day unto the virtuous. When night cometh, then I take good care not to summon sleep. It disliketh to be summoned. Sleep, the lord of the virtues. But I think of what I have done, and thought during the day. Thus ruminating, patient as a cow, I ask myself, what were thy 10 overcomings? And what were the 10 reconciliations, and the 10 truths, and the 10 laughters, with which my heart enjoyed itself? Thus pondering, and cradled by 40 thoughts, it overtaketh me all at once. Sleep, the unsummoned, the lord of the virtues. Sleep tappeth on mine eye, and it turneth heavy. Sleep toucheth my mouth, and it remaineth open. Verily, on soft souls doth it come to me, the dearest of thieves, and stealeth from me my thoughts. Stupid do I then stand, like this academic chair. But not much longer do I then stand. I already lie. When Zarathustra heard the wise man thus speak, he laughed in his heart, for thereby had a light dawned upon him. And thus spake he to his heart, a fool seemeth this wise man, with his 40 thoughts, but I believe he knoweth well how to sleep. Happy even is he who liveth near this wise man. Such sleep is contagious. Even through a thick wall it is contagious. A magic resideth even in his academic chair, and not in vain did the youths sit before the preacher of virtue. His wisdom is to keep awake in order to sleep well, and, verily, if life had no sense, and I had to choose nonsense, this would be the desirablest nonsense for me also. Now know I well what people sought formerly above all else when they sought teachers of virtue. Good sleep they sought for themselves, and poppy-headed virtues to promote it. To all those belauded sages of the academic chairs, wisdom was sleep without dreams. They knew no higher significance of life. Even at present, to be sure, there are some like this preacher of virtue, and not always so honorable, but their time is past, and not much longer do they stand. There they already lie. Blessed are those drowsy ones, for they shall soon nod to sleep. Thus spake Zarathustra. End of Part 1, Chapter 2, The Academic Chairs of Virtue. This recording is in the public domain. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to find out how to volunteer, please contact LibriVox.org. Thus Spake Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. Translated by Thomas Common. Part 1, Chapter 3, Backworldsman. Once on a time, Zarathustra also cast his fancy beyond man, like all backworldsmen. The work of a suffering and tortured god did the world then seem to me. The dream and diction of a god did the world then seem to me. Colored vapors before the eyes of a divinely dissatisfied one. Good and evil, and joy and woe, and I and thou. Colored vapors did they seem to me before creative eyes. The Creator wished to look away from himself. Thereupon he created the world. Intoxicating joy it is for the sufferer to look away from his suffering and forget himself. Intoxicating joy and self-forgetting did the world once seem to me. This world, the eternally imperfect, an eternal contradictions image and imperfect image, an intoxicating joy to its imperfect creator. Thus did the world once seem to me. Thus, once on a time, did I also cast my fancy beyond man,